Chapter 999. Dustless frowned as he noticed East Sensei's abnormality. When did this half-baked kid reach this level? Although Dustless never fought with East Sensei, he knew about him. In the Gotei 13, East Sensei's strength was in the middle. Even when he turned into a phantom, his strength was average. Is that a glowing pearl? Hogyoku. Dustless immediately noticed that there was an obvious wound on East Sensei's chest, and it was filled with a mysterious glowing pearl. No wonder this kid improved so much, it's because of the Hogyoku. East Sensei's speed and Ryatsu changed after the baptism of the Hogyoku. His eyes were bloodshot and his body was filled with murderous intent. Idiot, it seems like the Hogyoku is controlling you, not the other way around. Well, with your weak strength you shouldn't be able to control the Hogyoku. He aimed his palm at the eastern deity and was about to give him a fatal blow when an unexpected voice rang out. Heido number 73. Double Lotus Blue Flame Fall. A blazing flame attack rose from the ground and instantly engulfed East Sensei. He got rid of the suspicion too quickly. Looking at the two figures on the ground, Dustless was helpless. Looking at them, he saw Jin and Aizen Sosuke. And the one who activated the 73rd Heido was Sosuke Aizen. Bang bang bang. In the cloudless sky, several black figures appeared. In the blink of an eye, the captains of the Gotei 13 rushed over. Captain Zhou Xian, give this old man an explanation. What's going on with you in your current state? Head Captain Yamamoto said in a deep voice. A fiery red halo was emitted from his back. It's the same as the masked legion. No, it's even more thorough than them. Dustless explained. At this moment, East Sensei's body was overflowing with white sticky Ryatsu. In the blink of an eye, East Sensei was back to normal. Explanation. Old man, are you blind? The facts have already explained everything. What else do you need to explain? Thinking of Aizen's order, East Senpai had to take the blame. Bailgang invaded Soul Society before, and this time I was the one who secretly hurt Phoenix Bridge Rokuro. In order to prevent Dustless from nagging about these matters in the future, Aizen had East Sage bear all the sins. In any case, he was going to betray Soul Society and go to Hueco Mundo. Bearing a few more sins would dispel the captain's doubts. This was very suitable. Zhou Xian, why did you betray Soul Society? East Deity Yu's good friend Zhou Xian of Omura said in grief. Did you forget that we were together? I made that up to use you, Kimura, so that we can work together to uphold justice in Soul Society? What a joke. Soul Society is a place I want to destroy, how can I protect it? East Deity Xiang roared with a crazed expression. His hysterical tone was filled with deep hatred for Soul Society. Captain East Sage, if Soul Society did something wrong, you can tell us. There's no need to make things like this. Aizen also looked heartbroken. Just a mere Sosuke. Aizen, shut up. If you're willing to go to hell and stretch out your necks for punishment, I can consider giving up my current power. East Sage said arrogantly, then pointed at Aizen and cursed. If you can't do it, then get out of my way. Best actor and best supporting actor, such acting skills, Kiki. Wuchen looked at the scene in front of him with interest. The skills of these two professional actors had reached the realm of perfection. One was cold and ruthless and the other couldn't bear it. When they cooperated, the audience burst into tears. Head Captain Dustless couldn't stand it anymore. He turned to Yamamoto and said in a low voice, Captain East Sage has fallen to the evil path. We should eliminate him immediately. Don't talk nonsense. East Sage must have been tempted. It must be those bastards from the masquerade. Zhou Xian of Omura stood up for East Sage before he could say anything. You're lying to yourself. Twitching his mouth in disdain, Wuchen directly ignored this black bear. His eyes fell on the head captain, waiting for his reply. At this moment, East Deity was about to go berserk. Her rationality was swallowed by the Hogyoku and she became a killing machine. If you can capture him alive, then do your best. If you can't, then eliminate him. Yamamoto wasn't a soft-hearted person. He had lived for more than 2,000 years, his wisdom and experience far exceeded ordinary people. There were too many mysteries surrounding East Sage. Even if he captured him alive, he still had many questions to ask. Of course, he couldn't capture him alive. If he resisted, he would be eliminated on the spot. Capture me alive? Dream on, you bunch of death gods. Dong Xianyao sneered. Shortly after, he casually swiped his right arm in the air. Ka 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 sounds rang out. revealing an incomparably long and narrow black cavity. The other side was connected to Hueco Mundo. They could still hear the howls of great voids. Colluding with Hueco Mundo, the evidence is conclusive. Dustless pulled out his sword from its scabbard. His eyes were like torches and there was a threatening chill in his eyes. He stepped on the void and rushed forward, turning into a raging lightning bolt. Ow ow ow. Jillian's roar resounded through the sky. The captains didn't hesitate to surround him. As for East Sage, they left it to Dustless to deal with him. It seems that the development of the Hogyoku hasn't succeeded yet. Although East Sage is above the captain level, he is far from Aizen's level. The two sides are completely incomparable. Wuxian thought to himself. The current Eastern deity lord was just a drop in the ocean compared to Hogyalon Ran. Chapter 1000. The Hogyoku transformed East Sensei Yao was overflowing with Ryatsu. His whole body was covered with high-density Ryatsu. He was very arrogant. He pointed his sword at the sky. Even East Sensei Yao's body had the characteristics of a hollow physique. His skin was wrapped in white bones, which was very disgusting. His Ryatsu was like milk. You still have a long way to go. With a sneer, Dustless appeared behind East Sensei Yao with a flash step and swept his Zanpakuto. Clang! The bright sparks extinguished, and the Zanpakuto collided with a horrifying roar. East Sage wanted to easily defend against Dustless's attack. Sensing the surging Ryatsu in her body, East Sage wanted to report her confidence index. Go to hell, you eyesore. East Sensei Yao, who was gradually losing his mind due to the Hogyoku, roared. His hatred erupted uncontrollably. Since Dustless came to Soul Society, Aizen's nightmare began. The initiator of all of this was Dustless. Boom boom boom. A huge red light condensed in his mouth and a giant void flash was instantly formed. The dangerous fluctuation on it was enough to destroy the entire 9th Division. Ha! East Sensei Yao said proudly while condensing the void flash. I know you can dodge it, but if you don't, the entire 9th Division will be in trouble. These venomous words were spread throughout the entirety of Quiet Soul Society in an instant, as their spiritual pressure wreaked havoc. Captain East Sensei. Hearing these words, the members of the 9th Division turned ashen. They all widened their eyes and looked up at Zhou Xian, who was fighting with Dustless in the sky. At this moment they all thought it was a dream. The gentle captain who usually respected them was now exceptionally cold and heartless. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. A large void flash blasted out, leaving a mark in the void along the way. The void flash violently twisted and changed. The void flash was far more powerful than the late-stage Arcana break, Wang Su's flash. As expected of someone who can break the boundary between Reaper and Void. Although this Hogyoku is only a half-finished product, it can still increase East Sensei Yao's strength by several levels. Wuxian sighed with emotion in his heart. He sensed that the penetrating power of the void flash seemed to want to tear him apart. However, Wuxian just smiled. The golden light gathered on the blade of the first-generation ghost blade. It was also filled with murderous intent. This time he was going to kill Aizen's loyal dog, East Sensei Yao. Buzz buzz buzz. A crisp rumble rang out from the tip of the first-generation ghost blade. The blade was resplendent and bright, and a high density of spiritual pressure covered it. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. A gigantic slash formed entirely from an extremely strong spiritual pressure shot out. It was even stronger than East Deity Yu's void flash, and the incoming flash was instantly sliced apart. How could he be so strong? I have integrated with the Hogyoku and should be invincible. East Deity shouted out in shock. The aura of death assaulted his nostrils. His nerves immediately reacted and he responded. Bakudo 81 Skybreaker. A transparent wall blocked in front of him, defending against the golden sword pressure that was about to cut through the sky. Sensing the sharpness of the sword pressure, East Deity was afraid that he would not be able to withstand it and would use the Way of Binding again. Way of Binding 81 Sky Shattering. Two transparent walls appeared in front of him. East Sensei Yao was relieved. Fusing with Hogyoku? With your strength? Do you think you're Aizen Sosuke? Dustless snorted at East Sensei Yao's arrogant words. East Sensei Yao was only borrowing the power of Hogyoku temporarily. He was still far from being able to fully fuse with it. Aizen saw this and lent East Sensei Yao the Hogyoku. East Sensei Yao was still a few hundred years away from mastering it. Although the Hogyoku in front of him was defective, it was still difficult to master. Looking at the sword pressure coming down, Zhou Xian casually said, "If I use sky shattering with all my strength, it should be able to crack, crack, crack." Before he could finish his words, a crack appeared on sky shattering sword. Gulp. East Sensei Yao choked in disbelief. His eyes almost fell out. This was not a wall that could defend against Hado 89 and below. It was clearly a piece of paper that could be broken with a single strike. But even so, the power of the attack was weakened a lot. Dao Breaker 88 Flying Dragon Strikes the Thief. A dazzling light appeared and cut through the sky. The two powerful attacks inevitably collided. Because the Ryatsu Giant Slash was weakened, it cancelled out the nothingness. Cry Green Insect. East Sensei Yao sensed Dustless's danger and didn't dare to be careless. He didn't hesitate to release his Zanpakuto and his strength increased again. Clear Insect Second Style, Red Flying Locust. Countless sharp blades fell like a rainstorm. They were like tracking missiles with a tail that could automatically navigate. The attacks were extremely ruthless. Seemed like they wanted to punch Dustless into a bloody hole. This kind of child's play again. You dare to keep it for Bankai. I really don't know where you get your confidence from. Dustless curled his lips in contempt. East Sensei Yao thought that he could be reborn with the power of the Hogyoku and become arrogant. At the same time, a large amount of Ryatsu erupted from his body and a transparent wall appeared in front of him. Bakudo 81 Sky Breaker. Clang clang clang. The concentrated attacks all landed on Sky Breaker, and were instantly blocked. They were unable to move forward and were all blocked outside the transparent wall. They were unable to move at all. Behind him Wuxian was safe and sound. His expression was lazy. This is ridiculous. They are both Bakudo 81, why is the difference so big? East Sensei Yao's face turned black and couldn't help but be angry. The sky severance that he released with all his strength was torn into nothingness like a piece of paper. On the other hand, Wu Chen's sky severance was very firm and did not even have the most basic reaction. Chapter 1001. East Sensei was absent-minded and his bloodthirsty eyes lost their luster. Hado 31. Cannonball. The pink light disappeared in an instant, and East Sensei, who was absent-minded, was hit directly. Boom boom boom. The dull explosion attracted everyone's attention, and a huge flame burned in the void. East Sensei's good friend Sajin was furious and his eyes were as round as a fist. He shouted at Dustless, "If anything happens to East Sensei, I will make sure you die with him." But Dustless did not even look at him. A ferocious tiger would not turn its head because of a mad dog's roar. Bang bang bang. Beside Sakumura, a man covered in blood and carrying a broadsword suddenly appeared. His ferocious appearance made people not dare to look at him directly. Azuma laughed almost crazily and said, "To be honest, I also don't like that captain, but I have to admit that he is very powerful. For the time being I can't beat him." Although Zaraki was arrogant, it didn't mean that he was stupid. When he fought Dustless he was toyed with and he didn't even touch Dustless's body. "But if it's you, I'm sure I can cut you into pieces." Zaraki had already raised his Zanpakuto, and the sawtooth blade reflected a soul-stirring light, making people shudder. Boom boom boom. Zhuxian, who was so angry that he started laughing, almost went berserk. His nose was crooked from anger. A mere vice-captain dared to provoke him? He immediately unleashed his captain-level spiritual pressure, which was as boundless as the ocean, causing the ground to tremble. In an instant they were in the gravity field. Everyone was carrying 1,000 pounds of weight and it was difficult for them to move. Crack crack crack. Jillian, who was wandering around, couldn't bear the violent Ryatsu, and his bones were crushed by the gravity, turning into powder. "A bunch of idiots, you can take your time." In the distance, Aizen, who was trying his best to kill Jillian, was absent-minded. His mind was focused on the captains and he was carefully recording their moves and approximate strength. Aizen's eyes were like a camera, carefully recording everyone's movements, and then slowly analyzing them in his mind. It's useless. East Sensei was surrounded by flames and even his whole body was on fire, but he didn't feel anything. He was completely isolated by the white bones on his skin and there was no pain. Not even the slightest pain. Hollow steel skin? Narrowing his eyes, Wuxian speculated in his heart. Immediately the spiritual pressure in his body increased by another level. Puchi. Puchi. Without being attacked, his body split open and the pain spread all over his body. East-sensei was shocked as he found out that his body was being torn apart by some mysterious force and he was bleeding. A cold katana's light covered him. Could it be? She suddenly noticed that the sky above her was incomparably dark, and East deity instantly raised her head. Ryatsu raise eyes, ants Ryatsu Ryatsu Ryatsu's Ryatsu and Ryatsu Ryatsu. Several intersecting black rays of light descended from the sky, leaving a mess wherever they went. Even the wind and waves that blew past were cut apart. Hado 90. Ryatsu glanced at East-sensei. Hollow's steel skin shouldn't be able to defend against this move. Black coffin. Puchi. Puchi. As his voice fell, East deity Yao's entire body was torn apart. The invisible blade easily tore through his steel skin and pierced through his body, cutting him into pieces. Even his head was cut into several pieces. Damn, this is bad, I didn't control my strength. Seeing this, Dustless cursed. His intention was to kick East-sensei out of the captain's position and not to kill him. If he killed East-sensei now, it meant that the Hogyoku would fall into Soul Society's hands. A semi-finished Hogyoku was good, but it was useless to give it to Dustless. He wanted a finished Hogyoku. He regretted killing East-sensei. This kind of talent was useless, but it was too early to kill him. At the very least, he had to wait for the Hogyoku to be born. You can't kill me. The semi-finished Hogyoku in his chest shone with a mysterious light, and then it spewed out a large amount of white liquid and reconnected East-sensei's broken body. He didn't die. Dustless was rather surprised. Immediately he smiled in relief and said, "Super regeneration? This seems to be a hollow move. But you didn't die, it's God's blessing. I will burn incense when I have time." Dustless didn't care about the ability of super regeneration. He was 10-tailed and he could also recover any organ in his body. This kid can only use the power of the Hogyoku and he can also use the ability of super regeneration. But East-sensei can't evolve, it seems that I have to wait for a while. Dustless sighed in his heart. He could only wait for the Hogyoku to be completed and then he could rob it. In fact, he was jealous of the Hogyoku's other great ability, endless evolution. Although I can't kill you now, I will cripple you first. Your rotten life, after you finish serving me, I will send you to hell to meet your dead girlfriend. His pupils shot out a sinister ray of light, and Dustless instantly vanished without a trace. This sudden turn of events caused Dong Xianyao's entire person to be stunned, and he was flabbergasted. The restless East-sensei immediately released his Ryatsu, and focused on searching for Dustless's traces. Kakaka. The steel in front of him had actually been brutally chiseled into a large hole. Unknowingly, Dustless had already arrived in front of East-sensei, and looked down at him with cold eyes. Chapter 1002. East-sensei was extremely frightened, his hands were trembling, and he touched his heart that was penetrated. For a moment he was dumbfounded. What is this? It was obviously punched through by a fist. What a joke. How can a person's taijutsu be so strong? Bastard, what kind of witchcraft did you use? East-sensei was about to vomit blood. His body was shattered by someone using taijutsu. This was really not a glorious thing. If he didn't deliberately perceive the Ryatsu, East-sensei would have thought that the person in front of him suddenly changed and became the omnipotent captain. Are you talking about this? Due to the Hogyoku, East-sensei was different from before. His blind eyes were reopened and he could see the outside world like a normal person. Black fist. Looking at the black wrist in astonishment, East-sensei thought that he was old and dizzy, so he subconsciously rubbed his eyes. It's just a casual and ordinary punch. Raising the black iron fist under the sunlight, it suddenly reflected an invincible sharpness, as if in front of this fist, everything in the world can be easily shattered. Being able to break your steel skin, it can only mean that you are too weak. A casual and simple sentence almost made East-sensei faint. His steel skin can even defend against the captain's attack, but Dustless's dismissive tone clearly said that it was just a thin layer of paper. In anger, East-sensei wanted to use his trump card in one fell swoop. Bankai. Insect Cleansing Final Style Demon Cricket. The Ryatsu released by Zanpakuto suddenly turned into a huge ellipsoidal barrier, wrapping East-sensei and Dustless in it. The surroundings were dark and dim. Is this his Bankai? Dustless muttered to himself. He wanted to speak but suddenly found that his throat seemed to be stuck and he couldn't speak at all. Not only that, his hearing, vision, smell, and even his perception of Ryatsu were deprived in an instant. He couldn't perceive anything and all information from the outside world was isolated. He only knew that he was trapped in a black barrier. Kiki. How does this feel? This is my Bankai. Even you are helpless against it, right? East deity walked in front of Dustless and smiled sinisterly. Following his line of sight, Dustless was standing in his original spot, completely unaware. Even if East deity was standing right in front of him, he did not notice. This was the ability of the Eastern deity's Bankai. Could completely erase everything about the enemy. In this unique domain you can't feel anything. The only thing you can feel is pain. Don't worry, I will torture you slowly. I will not let you die so easily. East deity's tone was filled with the joy of revenge. Regardless of whether it was before or just now, she had always been suppressed by Dustless. Now that she was able to retaliate, she felt especially refreshed. With a cold expression, East deity wanted to slash at Dustless. Puchi. Dustless's skin was very fragile, and it was easily cut by the Zanpakuto and blood kept flowing. This bastard's ability is actually so strange. Dustless's face instantly turned incomparably pale. The stinging pain from the wound caused him to break out in cold sweat. He twitched uncontrollably and even his body swayed from side to side. It's useless to regret. This is what you get for going against Aizen-sama. And don't think that this is the end. This is just the beginning. I will cut you into pieces. Puchi. 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 After saying that, East deity waved his Zanpakuto madly and began to trample on Dustless. His screams were endless and those screams were worse than death. One had to admit that East deity was born to be an executioner. He specifically chose the softest and most painful parts of the human body. His technique was very delicate. In half a minute, Dustless's flesh was removed from his body. Don't you like to be in the limelight? Now that you are in such an unprecedented state, it will shock the entire Soul Society. Eastern deity coldly laughed. Wu Chen's entire body had been cleanly sliced off, leaving only a skeleton and a head. Of course, in order to ensure Dustless's safety, his organs were also preserved. But in this state his vitality could only last for a few minutes. You have a good relationship with Captain Unohua. I wonder what interesting things will happen when she sees you in this state. I'm really looking forward to it. Then East deity undid his Bankai and the sky became clear again. Where did that kid go? As soon as he undid his Bankai, Dustless disappeared without a trace. East deity looked around and his gaze suddenly froze in the distance. He clenched his fists. He was shocked to find that Dustless was unharmed. His expression was calm and there was even a faint smile on his face. Impossible, what's going on? Could it be that I was dreaming just now? The moment he lowered his head to think, East deity was petrified. His entire body turned into a human stick. It was exactly the same as the scene in his dream. East deity's limbs and flesh were all removed, leaving only his organs and a head. Did this idiot get beaten, silly? He kept chopping himself just now. The insensitive Zaraki said as he stared at East deity as if he was looking at an idiot. Hearing this, East deity spat out a mouthful of blood. His vision turned black and his body fell to the ground. Seriously, I just used a little illusion to turn the target of the attack into himself. I didn't expect such a show to happen. Hee, what a pity, I should have brought a digital camera. Wuchen curled his lips and sighed. It was a pity that Eastern deity wanted to kill him with his own hands, leaving only his internal organs and his head. He was literally turning himself into a eunuch. Chapter 1003. Jin moved closer to Aizen and whispered to him. Should we go and help him? What if the captain of the 11th division pisses him off? Aizen frowned when he heard this and the word Chuan appeared on his face. He originally hoped that Zhou Xian would kill Wu Chen. At the very least she would beat him half to death. Now it seemed that it was just his wishful thinking. The situation was completely opposite. Zhou Xian was going to be beaten half to death. Whether he could leave Soul Society unscathed was a problem. I'm not his opponent. Although he was unwilling, East Sensei had to face this cruel reality. He looked up at Dustless and felt a stab of pain in his heart. His calm and collected expression didn't change at all. This was the best proof that he didn't use his full strength. Let's go and finish the task given by Aizen Sama first. The semi-finished Hogyoku spewed out the milky white liquid again, and East Sensei's body instantly recovered. Before leaving, he glared at Dustless with hatred. His hatred didn't decrease. Instead, because of Dustless's suppression, it went deep into his soul. Just wait and see. He raised his hand and the void shattered like a mirror. A narrow crescent moon appeared and he stepped into it. So many captains. If I let you leave unscathed, how do you want me to explain to the captain? Inside the dark space it was pitch black. After a few breaths, a bright light broke the silence of the darkness, and the voice of the King of Nightmares was heard. So strange. A mere Shinigami can tear open the dark space with his bare hands. A sinister aura came from behind. East deity was about to panic. The shadow of death and despair covered his entire body. He who had witnessed Wuxian's horror shivered all over. His Zanpakuto instinctively swept out. Clang. A weak spark flashed, and East Sensei found that his Zanpakuto was caught by a dark hand. Even if I die, I'll drag you down with me. Looking directly at the emotionless eyes that could devour people's reason, East Sensei's eyes flashed with madness. The accumulated Ryatsu in his body quickly spread out like a tsunami, reaching every corner of the dark space. Bankai. Insect purging final move Yama Cricket. The oval-shaped ceiling barrier descended once again. Without exception, Dustless was stripped of all his senses. Other than his sense of touch, which was barely retained, all his other senses disappeared. Of course, leaving the sense of touch was also to let Dustless experience the pain of being cut into pieces. Perhaps it was because he had been teased by Dustless earlier, but a shadow had been left in East Deity's heart. He was not in a hurry to attack. Instead, he carefully observed for a while. Puchi. The Zanpakuto pierced through his palm, leaving a thumb-sized bloody hole, causing East Sage to grimace in pain. Phew. This shouldn't be an illusion, right? East Deity was about to let out a sigh of relief. His lips curled into a sinister smile of hatred. Just now, because Dustless had tricked him, he had been sentenced to death by 1,000 cuts. Now he was going to take it all back with interest. What's the use of this ridiculous explanation? Dustless shook his head in disdain. Then an explosive aura burst out from his body as he savagely attacked the interior of the barrier. The oval-shaped barrier suddenly shook violently. In the airtight dark space, there was a burst of cold air inexplicably, and thumb-sized cracks spread throughout the oval-shaped barrier. It's broken. East Sage suddenly felt that his brain wasn't enough. He stared at Dustless's earth-shaking aura. He really couldn't figure out how a person could have such an exaggerated aura. He was just a Shinigami. The Supreme Will pointed to the sky and regarded all living beings as ants. It was vicissitudes and overbearing. The attitude of treating anyone from beginning to end was only one kind of overlooking. In addition to contempt, there was still contempt. In addition to disdain, there was still disdain. Bang bang bang. The oval-shaped barrier couldn't withstand this vast aura. Under the dumbfounded gaze of East Sage, it turned into countless glass fragments and slowly drifted down until it disappeared into nothingness. You want to kill me with this half-baked bankai? It's too much of a joke. The barrier collapsed, revealing Dustless's cold face. East Sage's bankai was shattered by the tempered Haoshiku haki. Although my bankai defense barrier is very fragile and has been destroyed by others before, how can he rely on his aura? East Sage still hasn't recovered from the shock. He was deeply hesitant and puzzled. His bankai was destroyed by a person's aura, and it was so simple and thorough. This kind of situation happened for the first time in his life. His nerves were a little numb and he felt as small as a grain of sand. The game is over. In front of East Sage, a large number of photons gathered, and Dustless's body quickly reassembled, revealing his cold face. Go to hell. East Sage roared, and the Zanpakuto in his hand slashed down towards Dustless's head. Clang clang clang. The same scene played out exactly the same as before. The big hand covered with armament haki easily grabbed the incoming Zanpakuto. It's too far away. Some gaps can be made up and some gaps can't be crossed in a lifetime. First I'll destroy you, my most loyal slave. With a decision in his heart, Dustless increased the strength of his arm. His right arm exerted force and the Zanpakuto that was caught hummed, making a sorrowful sound. However, it was ignored by Dustless with a frosty face. Not good, this guy is going to destroy my Zanpakuto. East Sage instantly understood Dustless's intentions and used all his strength to pull out the Zanpakuto, but the effect was minimal and it couldn't shake Dustless at all. After a few breaths, a crisp sound signaled that East Sage's Zanpakuto was completely destroyed. Chapter 1004. The destruction of the Zanpakuto meant nothing to a Grim Reaper. Especially in the state of Bankai, the consequences of the Zanpakuto being destroyed were extremely serious. Even if it could be repaired in the future, its power would be greatly reduced. However, what angered East Deity the most was that his Zanpakuto was broken into pieces. How was he going to repair it? Oh, don't look so sad. Since you have escaped from the Grim Reaper and become a void, the Zanpakuto is useless. It doesn't matter if it's broken. It doesn't matter anyway. Dustless said with a smile as if it had nothing to do with him. His tone was filled with schadenfreude, which deeply provoked Zhou Xian. Bullshit. Zhou Xian roared furiously. Even because of excessive anger, his voice was extremely sharp and numb. Listening to it would make one's soul tremble. You think that's it? Looking at the fragments of the Zanpakuto, Dustless said with disdain. This was just the beginning. The spiritual pressure in his body surged again, emitting a soul-stirring pressure. Due to the overly strong spiritual pressure, even Zhou Xian cowered and retreated, quickly distancing himself from Wuxia. A pink light suddenly illuminated the dark space. Is that number 54 Hado, Waste Flame? Zhou Xian narrowed his eyes and pondered. At the same time, a question arose in his mind. This kind of flame would only burn the target, but for him who was in the void state, its effect was negligible. After the void state, Zhou Xian's skin was replaced with the void steel skin. It was a world of difference from the previous Grim Reaper state. His defense was almost several times higher. You want to hurt me with this kind of candlelight? Are you not awake? Or are you a child who likes to sleep? Zhou Xian said sarcastically. After a slight pause, he was about to humiliate Dustless again. However, Zhou Xian was shocked by Dustless's next move. This guy, is he going to? Looking at the sinister smile on Dustless's face, Zhou Xian's expression changed greatly. Soon after, he roared with all his might, "If you dare to do that, I will definitely tear you to shreds." In fact, due to her excessive nervousness, East Deity, who had always been elegant, even used vulgarities at this moment. Jie. Dustless smacked his lips when he heard this, and then he sneered. I'm a person who can't be threatened. The more you threaten me, the more disobedient my hands become. With a stern expression, the pink flame in Dustless's hand shot out rapidly, breaking Dao's 54 waste flame. As soon as his voice trailed off, a disc-shaped flame emerged from the ground. Its target wasn't the Eastern Deity Palace, but rather, the shattered Zanpakuto that had fallen to the ground. I'll definitely kill you, you bastard. The furious Eastern Deity Xiang roared loudly. Soon after, he opened his mouth and condensed a huge void flash. Whoosh, whoosh. Perhaps the heavens took pity on the Eastern Deity Xiang. This time he was in the same trench as him. Boom, boom. At the last moment, the void flash successfully stopped the flame of the disc and blew it into ashes. However, the power of the void flash was extraordinary. It was an all-out attack of the Eastern Deity Xiang. Even though it destroyed Dustless's plan to melt the Zanpakuto, the explosion of the void flash was too powerful and successfully affected the shattered Zanpakuto. Under the horrified gaze of the Eastern Deity Xiang, the Zanpakuto that had accompanied him for hundreds of years disappeared forever. Poof. The world in front of him turned black. The furious Eastern Deity was about to vomit blood. It was as if all the blood in his body had been sucked out, leaving only skin and bones. His piercing gaze was so piercing that no one dared to look him in the eye. Allah Allah Allah. Don't stare at me with such a ferocious gaze. This has nothing to do with me. Dustless shrugged his shoulders with an innocent expression. It was the Eastern Deity Xiang who wanted him to destroy his Zanpakuto. Go to hell. As if sensing the anger of the Eastern Deity Xiang, the half-completed Hogyoku in his chest felt his will and continuously released an endless amount of spiritual pressure. Roar roar roar. The roar that obviously belonged to the greater void came out from the throat of the Eastern Deity Xiang. At this moment his voidification had reached a new level. His entire body was wrapped in milky white spiritual pressure. It was airtight. Suddenly both of his hands straightened. A total of 10 fingers were aimed at Dustless, and at the same time a black light flashed. 10 void flashes. Your hatred for me is really unforgettable. Dustless could not help but sigh. The fluctuation of the destruction of the void flash caused the time and space in the black cavity to be distorted. Dustless could even see the scene in the depths of the universe. Go to hell, you eyesore of a devil. As the voice that contained monstrous hatred fell, the 10 black void flashes also disappeared. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The void flash and the black night sky merged into one, but through the perception of observation hockey, Dustless could still clearly perceive that dozens of flashes that reached the level of destruction were crushing towards him. Seeing this, Dustless did not dodge. His expression was indifferent, as if nothing had happened. He even hummed a tune out of tune. Ran away. Skid. When you and Aizen complete the Hogyoku, I will come and shear the sheep. Smirking, Dustless planned in his heart. Eastern deity Xiang had stepped into Hueco Mundo in the blink of an eye and disappeared. In the dark space, only the 10 void flashes that were ignored by Dustless were left. The moment the void flash was about to swallow Dustless, the void beside him suddenly distorted. Kemui. The distorted space was instantly magnified dozens of times. All the void flashes changed their trajectory and were sucked in the blink of an eye. They did not even touch Dustless's body. Chapter 1005. The Kemui of the left and right eye had different abilities. Could be used for both offense and defense. It was a perfect combination. Just one more step. Dustless thought of something. He got closer to the Kemui and deliberately got closer to the power of Void Flash. His whole body smelled rotten. Being a professional actor is really hard. I don't know how Aizen survived for so many years. Wuxia sighed and said. Looking around, there was a burn on his arm caused by the Void Flash. He was completely done by himself just now. The void in front of him twisted again, and a wave of ripples spread out rapidly like water ripples. Kemui. Asterisk crack. Asterisk in the bottomless black cavity, a mysterious force twisted and exploded. Then a ray of warm sunlight shone in from the outside. Dustless subconsciously blocked the light. Through the gaps between his fingers, he saw that Soul Society had been restored to its original state. The invaders were also dealt with. The beautiful scenery of Soul Society was restored. Chinkuen, you're injured? Unohana Retsu was surprised. Unohana Retsu's words attracted everyone's attention. They looked at Dustless, or rather they looked at his burned arm. It seems to be caused by Void Flash, Head Captain Yamamoto said. He had fought countless battles in the past 2,000 years. He could tell that Dustless's injury was caused by Void Flash, and it was a very powerful one. Dustless nodded and said awkwardly, I'm sorry, Head Captain. East Sensei's strength increased too much. I didn't pay attention and let him escape. Facing everyone's gaze, Wuxia said without blushing or panting. That's not important. However, we must investigate the source of this matter. Head Captain Yamamoto said coldly. He then said to Dustless, let's leave the 11th Division to Vice Captain Zaraki for now. You should go to the 4th Division for treatment. The Void Flash that injured you is very powerful. You should rest for a while. Hearing this, Wuxia shook his head like a rattledrum, wave after wave. This was just an act he put on purpose to find an excuse to let the East Deity Lord go. In reality, he was completely fine. With the Ten Tails recovery ability, it was only a matter of time. Chinkuen, don't you trust the 4th Division? You used to be the vice captain of the 4th Division. Unohana Retsu said sadly. Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He knew this black-bellied captain very well. In that case, I'll have to trouble Captain Unohana. Inside the 4th Division's building, the special room was surrounded by smoke. It was extremely hot. There was nothing extra in the room except for a large pool. Dustless was lying comfortably in the hot spring with his eyes closed. He was humming a tune. There's such a good thing. Why didn't I notice it when I was the vice captain of the 4th Division? What a mistake. This mysterious pool of water could actually heal the wounds on the body. It's most likely the path of return was learned from the head of the 0 Division. He opened his eyes and rested his head on his arms. He looked up at the ceiling. In the entire Soul Society, whether it was Urahara Kisuk or Unohana Retsu, The source of this healing method originated from Qilin Temple Tenshulang Creek. After a long time, Wuxian suddenly noticed that the wooden door was pushed open. In the smoke, there was a figure with white skin and a curvy figure looming in the air. Gulp. Dustless rubbed his eyes. He thought he was hallucinating because of his old age. Who knew that after rubbing his eyes, the curvaceous figure looked even more real. She walked gracefully and slowly appeared in front of Dustless. Captain Uno Hana. Dustless's face instantly turned red. This was the first time in his life that he exclaimed. The figure that appeared in the steam was Uno Hana Retsu. She was only using a simple bathrobe to cover herself. Her skin was as clean as a gem. It was white with a hint of red. It was like the work of God. Uno Hana Retsu had a gentle temperament. Even if she covered her huge snow-white breasts, Dustless, who was experienced in flowers, could still tell the size of her breasts through her cleavage. Maybe it was because the ground was too slippery. Uno Hana Retsu was swaying as she walked. Dustless's old eyes followed Uno Hana Retsu's movements. "What's there to see, Chinkuan?" Uno Hana Retsu asked curiously as she looked at Dustless's red face. She didn't expect Dustless to be looking at her. After all, they had been together for some time. Uno Hana Retsu understood Dustless's temperament. He wasn't a pervert. Being asked like this, Dustless returned to normal in the blink of an eye and was incomparably calm. "Nothing. Are you asking me why I was distracted? Actually, I was thinking about Sosuke Aizen's motive." Although he looked calm, Dustless's eyes were rolling. He was shouting in his heart, "Why didn't you tell me earlier that you're going to the hot springs when you're injured?" Chapter 1006. It was no wonder that Dustless recovered so quickly. After all, in Soul Society, it was quite common for men and women to bathe together. However, even though bathing together is popular in Soul Street, the captains of Soul Society don't seem to have this unique skill. As Dustless's thoughts spun, a small ripple appeared on the surface of the water. When he looked up, Uno Hualai's entire body had been buried under the water while Dustless was distracted. Gulp. After taking a deep breath, Dustless looked away and calmly laid back down in the water. "There's no need to care about this. I'd be an idiot if I didn't take advantage of it. After all, I'm not the one losing out." Dustless comforted himself. Even Uno Hualai, who was a female, did not care about such things. There was no need for him to care about what the world thought of him. Hee. A sly smile appeared on Dustless's face as he looked at Uno Hualai's snow-white skin and said, "Captain Uno Hua, why don't you let me help you scrub your back? I'm very familiar with this." Dustless's female friends in the system often asked him to scrub their backs, so he was very familiar with this skill. "There's no need for that." Hearing this, Uno Hualai's eyes flashed with awkwardness as her face turned red. She immediately shook her head and refused. "Yong-in can do this. You're a captain now, so there's no need to trouble you. When I was the vice-captain, I didn't see you asking me to scrub your back." Dustless complained in his heart, but he kept his mouth shut. Since Uno Hualai did not like it, there was no need for him to force it. Being too shameless would only make Uno Hualai feel annoyed. Looking up, Uno Hualai tried her best to look natural. However, in the eyes of Dustless, who was very observant, it was full of flaws. "It's a bit early to talk about this." Withdrawing his gaze from Uno Hualai's delicate body, Wuqian's fiery heart calmed down. His clear eyes returned to their usual calmness. Dustless quietly leaned against the side of the indoor hot spring, thinking about what had happened recently. Wanless Empire, Sosuke Aizen and Hueco Mundo are all hostile forces. After calming down, Dustless's body emitted an icy cold air. The originally warm spring water instantly became extremely cold. Jun, unknowingly, Uno Hualai leaned over with a natural expression. Perhaps it was because he was too engrossed in his thoughts, but Dustless did not notice Anohua's approach. He only raised his head when he felt someone touch him. "Captain Uno Flower, you..." Dustless's body twitched uncontrollably. Soon after, he calmly asked, "Yes, could it be that something happened?" In fact, because they were so close, Dustless could clearly see the cleavage that Uno Hua was covering. That soul-stirring curve caused Dustless to feel dizzy. His thoughts were a little hazy and he couldn't speak clearly. "We've known each other for so long. You can call me Lai from now on," Uno Hualai said gently with a refreshing smile. Hearing this, Dustless's eyes flashed with hope. He was disappointed that he was happy for nothing. He thought that Una Lai was throwing herself at him and his heart was extremely disappointed. I know Una Lai. Dustless sighed and returned to normal. He looked at the ceiling in boredom. His lifeless eyes were extremely depressed. What are you disappointed about, Qinjun? Una Lai asked curiously. Hearing this, Dustless rolled his eyes and said, of course it's. Looking at Una Lai's smiling face, Dustless tactfully shut his mouth. If he said that he was peeking at Una Lai's beauty, he would definitely be silenced by this first sword 8. Dustless closed his eyes. Just as he was thinking about how to deal with Una Lai, he felt a cold touch on his back that caused him to be stunned. Turning around, he saw Una Lai. Her face was flushed and she was trying her best to remain calm. However, her fingers that were touching Dustless's back were still trembling. Captain Una is scrubbing my back? A strange ripple appeared in Dustless's heart. He immediately calmed down. Una Lai's performance was very normal. If he overreacted, it would mean that he was hiding something. Those people are really unbelievable. They can control two powers at the same time. Moreover, they are the powers of two opposing races. Una Lai said suspiciously. Her voice was filled with astonishment. At the same time, she did not stop what she was doing. She carefully scrubbed Dustless's back. Her technique was very unfamiliar and she did not control her strength well. It was probably her first time doing this. Even so, Dustless still enjoyed it. Why? There is nothing strange about this. Dustless's expression was extremely calm. The combination of Shinigami and Hollow broke the boundary between two races. This method was very similar to the Uchiha clan and Senju clan. They were clearly two opposing races, but when they fused together they could step into a whole new realm. It was as if the heavens were deliberately teasing the world. Sometimes only when two opposing powers fuse together can one enter a higher dimension. Lai, you came to me for this answer, right? Dustless turned his head and looked at Una Lai with a smile. Although Una Lai was usually very gentle, this was only on the surface. In fact, she was also an arrogant woman who pursued the extreme. Actually, there is another race that has more advantages than the combination of Shinigami and Hollow. Dustless suddenly said while fiddling with the water like a child. There is such a mysterious existence in this world. Una Lai was puzzled. Of course there is. Dustless gave an affirmative answer. Immediately, a mysterious figure appeared on the water surface. He was wearing a white robe and held a transparent bow in his hand. They're destroyers. Chapter 1007. Hearing this, Una Retsu fell silent and stopped what she was doing. Qinjun, how did you know about such a secret? Una Retsu could not understand. Almost all information about the war from 1,000 years ago had been concealed by the Gotiai 13 and Central Room 46. Wuxian actually knew the secret behind it. He was really puzzled. There is no such thing as an impenetrable wall. The war 1,000 years ago affected the entire Soul Society, Hueco Mundo, and the main world. Do you think it's possible to erase all traces, Retsu? Dustless asked, ignoring Una Retsu's question. After pausing for a moment, Dustless continued, the current 12th Division is still conducting experiments on Quincy. Even if I wanted to avoid it, I would have heard about it. 12th Division? Captain, yeah. So that's how it is. Hearing this, Una Retsu gave a bitter smile before helplessly sighing, it's just as you said. Quincy has more advantages than any other race. Death gods needed a long time to accumulate strength, and after reaching a bottleneck they could only be like Captain Ya, using a long time to accumulate strength. Voids, on the other hand, had their bottleneck by devouring each other. Vasto Lord was their final destination. Quincy, on the other hand, was a cheating tool. They didn't need much spiritual pressure because Quincy could directly absorb spiritual power from the outside world to satisfy their own needs. Their advantages were self-evident. This shouldn't be the reason for the war 1,000 years ago. Death gods shouldn't be so narrow-minded. Destroying Quincy because of jealousy was too absurd. If they killed Quincy just because he was talented, it wouldn't make sense. It would be too much of a joke. Of course not. The main problem is that they have an extremely evil king. Una Retsu said in a deep voice. When she talked about that king, her voice trembled slightly. Evidently, she had a deep impression of that so-called king. Hearing this, Dustless understood who Una Retsu was talking about. A ferocious-looking man immediately appeared in his mind. Quincy only had one king. What's the king's name? Dustless asked, feigning ignorance. His name is Yaoach. In the end, Uno Hualai said king's name. Soon after, she said in a serious tone, that man is not only powerful, but his abilities are also world-shaking, toppling the common sense of the world. Dustless gently nodded when he heard this. He had some understanding of the Great War 1,000 years ago. Although the Grim Reaper won in the end, it was a Pyrrhic victory. It was the kind of victory where he had to sacrifice himself to kill the enemy. Some of Yaoach's abilities were even more powerful than his. What happened to that man in the end? He was probably killed by the head captain. Dustless asked deliberately. In fact, Yaoach had been completely defeated at that time. But for some reason Yamamoto only made Yaoach lose his strength, heartbeat and consciousness. In short, old man Yamamoto only sealed Yaoach in the end and did not kill him. The reason was unclear. Uno Hualai paused and thought back to 1,000 years ago. She then bitterly smiled and said, I don't know what Genryusai was thinking at that time. But I still remember Genryusai's helpless expression. It was as if he could kill Yaoach but couldn't. So that's how it is. That old man Yamamoto did it on purpose. Hearing this, Dustless suddenly smiled. Before he had some vague guesses about Yaoach's background. Now Uno Hualai's words confirmed Dustless's guess. There was no doubt that old man Yamamoto had defeated Yaoach 1,000 years ago. At that time he clearly had the ability to kill Yaoach, but the head captain only made Yaoach lose his strength, heartbeat and consciousness. In the end he did not kill Yaoach and only sealed him. Although the head captain usually looked very gentle like a neighbor's grandfather, the Goti I-13's predecessor was in essence an assassin group. Sealing Yaoach was the complete opposite of the head captain's style. When facing a big threat he would always want to get rid of it as soon as possible. He would never let Yaoach go so easily, and he would not let a disaster that destroyed Soul Society live like in the future. Therefore, according to Dustless's guess, it was not that the head captain did not want to kill Yaoach, but that he had no choice but to seal him. Maybe that bastard Yaoach is also a part of the Soul King's body? That's why old man Yamamoto was so cautious. He only made Yaoach's strength, consciousness and heartbeat disappear and then sealed him. Dustless speculated. Maybe killing Yaoach was equivalent to killing the Soul King. Although the whole world would not collapse and disappear because of this, there must be some kind of big problem that could not be solved that forced head captain Yamamoto to not kill him. Chinkun, this kind of thing should not be told to outsiders. Uno Hana continued to scrub Dustless's back. She patted his shoulder and whispered in Dustless's ear, no matter what the truth is, Yaoach is an extremely dangerous man. However, the head captain sealed him. At the end, Uno Hana let out a sigh of relief. It had been a long time since she last felt relaxed. Sealed? That's just the head captain's bluff. I'm afraid it won't be long before Yaoach regains consciousness. Dustless shook his head and stretched. He did not want to think too much about it. After all, it was just a guess. But one thing was for sure. Yaoach wanted to devour the Soul King, and Dustless also had the same idea. Therefore, Dustless wanted to know everything about Yaoach. Chapter 1008. About half an hour later, the gentle Uno Hana Retsu stood up and moved her sore shoulders. Sit down, Retsu. I have many things to ask you. Qin Xiaobei pulled Uno Hana Retsu to the side. Both of them were wearing simple bath towels, but there was no awkwardness when they talked. The atmosphere was very relaxed. What a pity. Getting her is as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Dustless glanced at Uno Hana Retsu from the corner of his eyes and smacked his lips. At first he was very narcissistic and thought that Uno Hana Retsu was here to seduce him. Who would have thought that she would just help him wipe his back and nothing else? She didn't even have any intentions in that area. Dustless was happy for nothing and felt very depressed. Chinkun, do you still remember East Sage's pearl before she betrayed us? After a moment of silence, Uno Hana Retsu asked calmly. Dustless's heart sank. He naturally knew what pearl Uno Hana Retsu was talking about. Hogyoku. Urahara Kisuk had also researched that thing. I heard that it was used to break the boundary between Shinigami and Nihility. However, after Urahara Kisuk betrayed Soul Society, the pearl he researched also disappeared. Uno Hana Retsu said something shocking. Retsu, do you mean? A bad idea popped up in his heart. Wuxian asked in a roundabout way, hoping to fish out some information. The pearl Urahara Kisuk had researched was used to break the boundary between Shinigami and Nihility. Its purpose was the same as East Sage's, but they both seemed to have failed. So, Unohana Retsu's expression became more serious. She said seriously, if it's possible, what if the two failed pearls fused together? Puchi. Dustless spat out saliva when he heard this. He looked at Unohana Retsu as if he had seen a ghost. Where did the perfect Hogyoku come from? It was created by the fusion of Aizen's Hogyoku and Urahara Kisuk's pearl. As a transmigrator, Dustless knew about it. However, it was unscientific for Unohana Retsu to know about it. Did the head captain tell you all this? Dustless raised his eyebrows and asked. Unohana shook her head and did not mince her words. This is just my guess. You just said that only by combining the power of void and death can one reach a higher level. That's why I came up with this idea. If two orbs with opposite attributes fuse, perhaps a miracle can happen. Those are your exact words. Dustless was stunned and speechless for a moment. He couldn't help but complain in his heart. If I knew your IQ was so terrible, I wouldn't have said those words. I would have left them to rot in my stomach. A thought suddenly flashed through his mind. Dustless urged, if that's the case, we should immediately send an expeditionary force to Hueco to capture that crazy bastard East deity, lest he does something irreversible. Flattening Hueco and killing all of Aizen's minions was Dustless's long-cherished wish. Crazy bastard? Unohana Retsu rolled her eyes at Dustless and said in a bad mood, most of the crazy things he did were forced by you. However, I do need to inform you on Lu Sai. 10 days later, Dustless finally stepped out of the 4th Division. As soon as he stepped out of the 4th Division's shooting range, a 3-meter-tall man blocked Dustless's path. Head Captain, it's a sunny day and you're not patrolling. Instead, you're blocking the 4th Division's path to welcome me. How can I accept such a warm welcome? I'm flattered. Dustless crossed his arms and said with a smile. Although he said that, his face was filled with murderous intent. This guy must be here for East Deity. This old man's 7th Division is the Inner Courts Guard team, responsible for the safety of Quiet Soul Society. I was supposed to deal with East Deity that day, but who knew he wouldn't let you go? Here Zhou Xian's voice was filled with melancholy, but then he remembered East Deity's character and said coldly, this old man and East Deity have known each other for 100 years. I know his character. He wouldn't betray Soul Society. There must be a reason for his sudden betrayal. Wu Chen's face suddenly condensed a cold light when he heard that. He sneered and said, hidden trouble? What a joke. A rotten peach will always be a rotten peach. East Deity's betrayal is an indisputable fact. Since you trust East Deity so much, go to Hueco and ask him himself. I still have things to do. Goodbye. With that, Dustless walked past him. Stop, this old man didn't allow you to leave. Soul Society's only friend had betrayed him, and Zhou Xian was already furious. Now that Wu Chen ignored him, he immediately pulled out his Zanpakuto in anger. Clang clang clang, the Zanpakuto's cold light was aimed at Dustless. Zhou Xian's tone was full of hostility. This old man's duty is to protect Quiet Soul Society. Since you fought with East Deity in Quiet Soul Society that day, you must report the result to me. Dustless's footsteps slowed down, revealing half of his cold face. He said sarcastically, so that's how it is. After beating around the bush, in the end you just want to ask me if I killed East Deity, right? Don't change the subject, this is official business. You must report the details to me, then I will report it to the head captain. Zhou Xian said matter-of-factly. Report it to you? Fixing his bone-piercing eyes on Zhou Xian, who was wearing a mask, Dustless taunted him mercilessly. You're just a bear. You want me to report the battle to you? Who do you think you are? Your hands have reached too far, this kind of thing is none of your business. Chapter 1009. Dustless didn't like this stinky bear at all. Sometimes he would just do his job half-heartedly. But when it came to matters that had nothing to do with him, he just had to interfere. You have to report East Deity's situation to me. This is part of my job. It has nothing to do with personal relationships. Zhou Xian said with a determined look, East Deity. He is definitely not the kind of person who would betray Soul Society for no reason. I see. After talking for a while, Dustless finally understood what he meant. East Deity wouldn't betray Soul Society for no reason, would he? Are you implying that I forced him to do so? Humph. Zhou Xian snorted and didn't reply. Obviously that was what he meant. Sorry, I don't have time to chat with you. So, if you have any complaints, you can complain to the head captain. Dustless waved his hand and left Zhou Xian alone. Bastard. How dare you? Do you really think I can't do anything to you? Zhou Xian was so angry that he trembled. He was ignored again and again. He wanted to calm down, but it was too difficult. Visible ripples appeared in the void around him. They were as magnificent as the waves of the sea. Strange energy waves surged out of Zhou Xian's body. How dare you show off your spiritual pressure to me? You're not even as good as my vice-captain. The invisible ripples spread to Dustless's body. His hair stood on end. Dustless turned his head and sneered, "You're such a lousy captain. You must have joined the Gotiai 13 through the back door of the head captain. Do you want to try?" Zhou Xian asked coldly. Then the sky darkened and a shadow of a few hundred meters tall appeared. It was a ferocious giant with a blade. It was completely composed of spiritual pressure and its aura was monstrous. It looked down on Wuxian on the ground. Seeing this, Dustless raised his head and glanced at the black shadow. He curled his lips in disdain and said casually, "It's just an empty shell. In fact, it's just as fragile as a blockhead like you. Can be broken with one poke." Golden spiritual pressure overflowed from his body. Dustless was about to teach Zhou Xian a lesson when a beautiful figure walked out from the 4th division. He had clearly taken a step forward, but in an instant he had flown 100 steps away. Captain Uno Flower. Zhou Xian lowered his voice. He wasn't the only one who was afraid of the captain of Uno Flower. Almost every captain and vice-captain of Soul Society was afraid of her. Only a weirdo like Dustless and Unohua had fun together. Everyone else stayed away from them. This is a private matter between me and him. It's best that Captain Uno Flower doesn't interfere. This is the 4th division. If we fight, it's inevitable that we'll implicate the powerless medical personnel. Zhou Xian was still unwilling to back down when he thought of the relationship between him and Dong Xinyao. His scarlet eyes stared at Dustless fiercely. If it wasn't for him, none of this would have happened. "Captain Zhou Xian, are you threatening me?" Unohua smiled gently. But this time it was different from before. Her entire being was dark and gloomy. Her laughter sounded like the screams of ghosts. Whoosh, whoosh. Zhou Xian was shocked. He felt a chill down his spine. A dense murderous aura was quietly staring at him. It was as if he would be killed on the spot if he did anything wrong. The instincts of beasts were sharp. Zhou Xian was drenched in cold sweat. He knew what was good for him and kept his zanpakuto. The faint shadow in the sky also disappeared. "You bastard. Are you really the captain of the 11th division? Don't tarnish the name of Jianba. Come at me if you have the guts. Don't hide behind a woman. If you're a man, come out and fight me." Zhou Xian, who was unwilling to give up, roared loudly, feeling extremely aggrieved. "I'm sorry. I just came out from the 4th division. My body is still weak. I'm not fit to fight." Wuxian chuckled, completely ignoring Zhou Xian's disdain. He provoked him in a strange way. "I just want to see your face when you want to hit me but can't. The sadder you are, the happier I will be." You. He lifted his huge finger and pointed it at Wuxian while trembling. The flames on the left side of the formation were attacking his heart. If it wasn't for Unohua Lai, who was an unfathomable existence, he would have killed Wuxian with his sword. This kid's poisonous mouth was even more infuriating. "I like to live off women. If you think you're strong enough, you can ignore Unohua's captain and come at me directly." Dustless shrugged and made an expression that said, "I'm not going to run away. Bastard. If you have the guts, come out and fight me face to face. Don't worry, I won't kill you." Zhou Xian kept scratching his head. This was the only thing he could think of. He could not think of any other curse words to deal with Dustless. Compared to Dustless, who knew how to curse, he was still 1,000 miles away. Boring. Goodbye, Lai. Seeing that Zhou Xian was at a loss of words, Dustless lost all interest. He cupped his hands at Unohua and thanked her. Then he disappeared along with his spiritual pressure. What a coward. Seeing Dustless leaving, Zhou Xian said angrily, "Why is Unohua protecting him? A coward like him is not fit to be the captain. If you didn't protect him, I would have killed him." Unohua pursed her lips and smiled. Then she explained, "Captain Zhou Xian, you must be mistaken. The reason why I didn't leave is not to protect Lord Chen, but to protect you in the dark." It was precisely because of Unohua Retsu's presence that Dustless did not choose to make a move. Instead he was toying with left formation like a child. If he really did make a move, the 7th Division would have already started preparing for their captain's funeral. Although they were both team leaders, according to Unohua Retsu's estimations, if Zhou Xian were to go up against the unfathomable Dustless, he would probably be instantly killed by the black coffin descending from the sky. Chapter 10:10. Unohua Retsu was both angry and amused. She thought that Zhou Xian knew his place, but he thought that Dustless was scared. That brat has only been a death god for half a year, but I've been a death god for dozens of times longer than him. I was even personally trained by Lord Yuan Lu Sai. Zhou Xian said proudly. There were only a few people who were taught by the head captain and he was one of them. He did have the right to be arrogant. Anyway, don't go find Xinjun. The head captain doesn't want Quiet Soul Society to have internal strife. After glancing at the hopeless left team, Unohua Lai turned around and entered the 4th Division. Before she left, she couldn't help but say, Xinjun is a very scary but also very cute person. I'm on his side. Captain Unohua. What do you mean? Zhou Xian was taken aback and asked in an unfriendly tone. After being a captain for dozens of years, he naturally knew what Unohua meant. It was a direct threat. In other words, if there was a war, Unohua Retsu would side with Dustless. It's exactly what you think. Captain Zhou Xian, the 4th Division still has things to do. Goodbye. Without turning around, Unohua left Zhou Xian with her back. Being trained by the head captain was indeed something to be proud of. However, if he thought that he was superior and looked down on everyone else, it would be a joke. The head captain was the strongest death god in the past 1,000 years, but he was not invincible. Bastard. Seeing this, Zhou Xian's heart was filled with anger, and a sense of grievance and resentment arose spontaneously. Today seemed to be the most unlucky day in his life. He was ignored and slapped in the face again and again. His rough and thick face turned purple and black. Time quickly passed. In the blink of an eye, 7 days had passed. The 1st Division held a captain's meeting as usual. I've decided to send an expeditionary force into Hueco Mundo to find traces of East Deity and capture him. The head captain opened his turbid old eyes. They were not as unfocused as before. His gaze was as sharp as a knife and as sharp as an eagle's. It was very threatening. The head captain said in an imposing manner, if East Deity is the culprit behind everything, he must be arrested and brought to justice. Hearing this, Dustless looked at Unohua Retsu. This was probably the result of her discussion with the head captain. Sir Head Captain, I'm willing to go to Hueco Mundo. Zhou Xian was the first to volunteer. It's not suitable for you to go to Hueco Mundo. Everyone knows about your relationship with Captain East Deity. If you don't see it, then it will be bad. Hearing this, Zhou Xian's face darkened. He looked at the source of the voice and found that it was Wu Chen. Don't slander me. If I'm not suitable, do you think you're suitable? Zhou Xian sneered. He didn't have a good impression of Dustless. Hearing this, Wu Chen smiled calmly and walked out of the group of captains. He also volunteered to fight, saying, everyone knows about my conflict with Eastern Deity. The most suitable person for this expedition to Hueco Mundo is undoubtedly me. No. Aizen Sokiai stood out and said, you're the captain of the 11th Division. If you leave, who will be in charge of the Great Void from Soul Society and the modern realm? I personally recommend you to be the captain. In the end, you're just afraid that I'll kill your dogs. You'll have a better chance if you find a soft-hearted Zhou Xian. Dustless disdained. At the same time, he organized his thoughts. Just as he was about to argue, the head captain spoke first. The captain of the 11th Division is indeed not suitable to go to Hueco Mundo, but... Yamamoto nodded calmly and said, East Deity is about to betray Soul Society. The 7th Division is now in a slump. Since Captain Dustless wants to go to Hueco Mundo, then transfer to the 7th Division and become the captain. If I transfer to the 7th Division and become the new captain, then who will be the captain of the 11th Division? Sword 8? Dustless guessed in his heart. He subconsciously looked at Old Man Yamamoto. Although he hid it very well, the pride in Old Man Yamamoto's eyes was clearly seen by Dustless. Could it be that cunning old man? Dustless instantly understood the head captain's intention. He cursed in his heart. If I'm not wrong, Zaraki should be the one to replace me. I didn't expect him to take advantage of me in the end. Dustless shook his head and sighed. The head captain's next words confirmed his guess. Captain Dustless will be transferred to the 7th Division and replaced by the original vice-captain, Zaraki. His strength is obvious to all. He is completely qualified to be the new Sword 8. The head captain's old voice revealed a touch of dominance. I agree with both hands and feet, Dustless said indifferently. I also agree, Unohana Retsu followed. The vice-captain of the 11th Division? That Ryatsu monster. Although he doesn't know Bankai, his rough Ryatsu is indeed suitable to be a captain. Plus his vitality is very strong. If that's the case, I also agree, Yukitake Fukaku said. Okitake Jushru also agreed. Old man Yamamoto was his teacher, so he naturally had to support him at this time. Seeing this, the head captain smiled with satisfaction. He waved his hand and said in a powerful voice, if that's the case, Dustless will be transferred to the 7th Division, and Zaraki will be the new Sword 8. The mission of going to Hueco Mundo will be handed over to the 7th Division. Dustless was indifferent. After all, as long as he was the captain, it didn't matter which division it was. He didn't expect the so-called members to be of any help anyway. At the crucial moment he still had to rely on himself. Others were unreliable. Chapter 10-11. Sosuke Aizen's expression didn't change, but his heart was filled with despair. There was no doubt that Dustless's strength was enough to capture East Sensei. Once he was captured, Aizen's plan would fail. What's worse, he would be exposed. Aizen's brain raced as he tried to think of a solution, but he couldn't think of a suitable one. He could only watch Dustless's back as he left. At least tell East Sensei about this, let him hide for a while. Aizen made a decision. 10 days passed in the blink of an eye. Dustless stepped into Hueco Mundo as he wished. The first impression of this barren land was that it was stingy. Kakaka. In the boundless void, a blinding white light suddenly flashed. Then, a door that connected to a different dimension appeared. Then a figure rushed out from it. Is this the Expeditionary Army's camp? Looking down at the Expeditionary Army encampment below, Dustless muttered to himself. His body shook as he landed on the ground. At the same time, several figures rushed over. Hello, I am the captain of Hueco Mundo's Expeditionary Army. My name is Embroidered Shell. A middle-aged man wearing a death armor came over and said politely to Dustless. Isn't this guy Embroidered Shell? He replaced Ikamaru Jin's 3rd Division captain after Ikamaru Jin and Aizen betrayed Soul Society? He's not a good guy either. Dustless confirmed this person's origin and identity. Embroidered Shell gave off a similar feeling to Aizen. His first impression was that he was gentle and polite. He didn't have the arrogance of a Death Expeditionary Army captain. Instead, he was as approachable as an ordinary person. In fact, this was all a disguise. This guy was just a poisonous snake that hid his tongue. If he exposed a flaw, he would open his bloody mouth and deliver a fatal blow. In short, he was the same as Aizen, shrewd and scheming. Dustless went straight to the point. Captain Tianbei, the head captain, should have informed you beforehand. My purpose for coming here is that East Deity wants to. The Heavenly Shell embroidery assistant nodded when she heard this. Shortly after, she laughed loudly and said, You don't have to worry about this. Our expeditionary army has already detected the traces of the Eastern Deity Fortress. However, at this point, the Heavenly Shell embroidered assistant scratched her head awkwardly and sighed helplessly. However, I only managed to find traces of him. His abilities are terrifyingly strong and I am no match for him. Sigh, it's all my fault for being so useless that the Soul Society had to send someone. This is very normal. East Deity Yu's strength is beyond Death God's knowledge. There are only a handful of people in Soul Society who can fight him head-on. Captain Tianbei, you don't have to belittle yourself. Dustless glanced at the Heavenly Shell embroidered assistant. His expression was natural. He had expected this. With the half-completed Hogyoku, East Deity's strength would increase tremendously. The only thing that puzzled him was that it had only been half a month since East Deity Fortress was kicked out of Soul Society. In the vast Hueco Mundo and with the limited manpower of the Expeditionary Army, it had only taken half a month to find traces of East Deity Fortress. This efficiency was unreliable. However, I still have to congratulate Captain Tianbei. East Deity Fortress is now an important criminal of Soul Society. If you capture him, it will definitely be a great achievement. Dustless cupped his hands and congratulated. One would not hit a smiling person. No matter what happened to the heavenly shell embroidered assistant in the future, at the very least she was still on Soul Society's side. It is my duty to serve Soul Society until the day I die, the heavenly shell embroidered assistant said solemnly. Immediately after, she pulled Dustless to the Expeditionary Army's encampment and said, "You have traveled thousands of miles from Soul Society to Hueco Mundo. Although the Expeditionary Army has very few resources of all kinds, a welcome meal is absolutely indispensable." Dustless did not refuse and followed the heavenly shell embroidered assistant to the Expeditionary Army's encampment. The only thing that made him uncomfortable and strange was that he had only passed through a world-crossing gate to reach Hueco Mundo. As for the thousands of miles, in the evening, a banquet was held at the Expeditionary Army's encampment, which was much more abundant than the usual monotonous meals. Most of the so-called Expeditionary Army were abandoned people of Soul Society. Most of them were exiled sinners and criminals. Soul Society would never care about them and would even forget them directly. This was a group of abandoned people. That night, perhaps because he drank too much, Dustless entered a dream early, or perhaps because of the sudden change of environment, Dustless was a little uncomfortable and his head was dizzy all day. Boom, boom. At midnight, a loud explosion resounded through the starry sky within 100 miles. The destructive fluctuations were inhumane and almost wiped out the entire Expeditionary Army's encampment in an instant. "I've just arrived and there are already great voids coming to my door. Why are they not giving me face?" Caught off guard, Dustless was buried in the sand pit and it took him a long time to wake up from his daze. Then he saw his hockey spread out like water ripples, and the great voids around him did not let him go. A vasto lord, and a few ajuches in addition there are a lot of Jillian. Such an exaggerated lineup should not be directed at the Expeditionary Army. Since it was not directed at the Expeditionary Army, the target could only be Dustless, a newcomer. Eisen, that traitor, told Dongson in advance that he wanted me to come to Hueco Mundo, so he sent Vastolord to plot against me? Dustless whispered and the sky suddenly turned golden. Whoosh. When the mysterious Vastolord noticed that Dustless was still alive, he casually shot out a huge golden void flash. Due to its power, it directly dyed the dark night into a dazzling day. In a trance, Dustless saw a female great voids with long golden hair. Chapter 10:12. So it's her. What a pity. You Vastolord were born with the curse of fate. You're just pawns used by Eisen Sosuke. Ignoring the void flash, Dustless's body glowed with a bright light as he dashed out at a speed beyond any creature's comprehension. Boom, boom, boom. The huge void flash created a huge crater in the ground. A large part of the silver desert was scorched. All life forms caught in the blast were annihilated. It must be an illusion. The blonde void muttered to herself. She suddenly felt a flash of light pass by her shoulder. When she tried to sense it, it disappeared. Now that she thought about it, it must have been an illusion. How strange. You should be called Hellable. Now you've become a raid. Hawking. It seems that East Senpai has been driven crazy by me. He's using the half-finished Hogyoku to arraid you. A ghostly whisper came from behind her. Hellable's expression changed as she turned around. Death God. Hellable glared at Dustless and clenched her fists. She turned to look at the scorched land. Her beautiful eyes were filled with shock. She was hit by the void flash. How could she be unharmed? This was cheating. Don't worry. I won't kill you. Dustless chuckled. He could see that Hellable's blonde hair was covered in sweat. Her vigilance was clear. East Senpai ordered you to come, right? Eisen was still in Soul Society. Only East Senpai could order Hellable. Humph, I have no right to tell you that. Holding the sharp bone sword, Hellable said stubbornly, Death God and voids are natural enemies. It's normal for me to kill you. No one ordered me. I'm a Vastolord. There's no one in Hueco Mundo who can order me around. You're quite stubborn. Dustless couldn't help but feel sorry for Hellable. From the beginning to the end she was just a pawn of Eisen. The most melodramatic thing was that in the future, Eisen thought that Hellable had no value and instantly killed her with his blade. He was a synonym for tragedy. Ring turn. After the cold shout, Hellable was nowhere to be seen. Even though I don't know why, it seems like I was only able to escape Void Flash's attack by sheer luck. Hellable appeared on Dustless's right. Seeing that he didn't even notice her existence, she sneered and swung her sharp bone sword. Whoosh, whoosh. Because Hellable had used too much strength, her sword was covered in a layer of sharpness. She swung it mercilessly at Dustless's head. Void Walkers were cruel and violent, and Hellable was no exception to her enemies. Clang clang clang, dazzling sparks splashed in the air. Hellable was stunned. Her eyes widened as she looked at Dustless in a daze. You caught my slash with your bare hands? Harabelle said in shock, her voice trembling. Dustless Eagle's bony little hand easily grabbed her sharp, serrated blade. It was as easy as grabbing a fire stick. It was exceptionally easy. How is this possible? He's just the captain of the Grim Reaper. Logically speaking, a Vasto Lord should be stronger than a captain-level Grim Reaper. But why is this happening now? Hellable muttered to herself in disbelief. Due to the excessive shock, her proud snowy peaks were undulating, swaying at a soul-stirring angle. Looking at the calm Dustless, Hellable realized that her brain, which she usually relied on, was not enough today. Looking at his cold eyes, Hellable suddenly realized that she had returned to the time hundreds of years ago, becoming an insignificant void of the lowest level. Gulp. Hellable made a rare noise. Then her beautiful eyes shone with a fierce light. The haze was swept away and the strength in her hand increased by several times. She thought that she could cut off Dustless's arm, but what happened next killed her. Crack crack crack. A crisp cracking sound followed. Obviously, Hellable's unreserved attack had dealt a blow to her optimism. However, Hellable was not happy. I'm sorry for breaking your weapon, Dustless said apologetically as he looked at the crack on the white weapon. The cracked bone weapon was the great sword that had accompanied Hellable for many years. What kind of monster is this guy? Seeing that, Hellable immediately retreated in a flash. She stared at Dustless's fist in disbelief. She was stunned. Even with her mental fortitude, she could not help but be stunned by such a shocking scene. She lost her mind and thought. Vasto Lord? Do you think that will change anything? In my eyes, Jillian and Vasto Lord are the same. It's meaningless. Vasto Lord was indeed able to crush the captain, but he had to know who he was dealing with first. If it was a veteran captain like Unohana Lai or Old Man Yamamoto, the one being crushed would be a great void like Vasto Lord. I once chased East Deity Yao out of Soul Society. His strength far surpasses yours. Do you know what this means? Dustless sneered and continued. He only sent you to test me. It's best if you can kill me, but it's fine if you can't. The most you'll be killed. You're just a pawn anyway. Not only you but the other great voids and the so-called Vasto Lord are all pawns. Right now you belong to the category of being abandoned. Chapter 10:13. Hearing this, Hellable stared at Dustless. She did not mention anything about Aizen and East Sensei. Little girl, do you think I don't know who the mastermind is? Naive. Dustless could not help but laugh. Ordinary people might not know, but he was an invader from the third dimension. He knew everything about Aizen, East Sensei and Jin Ikamaru. Remember, I'm not an abandoned pawn. Otherwise, that lord would have killed me long ago. Hellable said coldly. Her tone was firm. She believed Aizen and the others. Pfft. Hearing this, Dustless could not help but laugh. He mocked. Idiot, don't you understand the situation? You're just sending yourself to death. This is called borrowing someone else's knife to kill someone. Whoosh. Done talking, Dustless turned into a gale and wreaked havoc out. A violent storm rolled up behind him and he instantly disappeared without a trace. So fast. Hellable's pupils constricted as she felt a fatal threat. At the same time she was furious. Dustless had charged over so openly. Clearly he did not take her seriously. Just like the provocation just now, in Dustless's eyes, Vasto Lord was Jillian. I'll play with you until the end. Let's see how strong you are. Golden spiritual pressure erupted as Hellable unhesitatingly returned to her blade. The difference between them was too great. She could only use her trump card to deal with Dustless. Conquer him, Emperor Mermaid Empress. After returning to her blade, Hellable was clearly different from before. Her aura skyrocketed and a terrifying tide of energy flowed out of her body. It was endless, wave after wave, like an endless sea. Then something even stranger happened. Crack, crack, crack. Icy spiritual pressure swept out, freezing everything in its path. With Hellable as the center, Everything within a few hundred meters turned into a land of ice. This kind of trick. Don't use it on me again. With a stern expression, Dustless gathered light under his feet and he fiercely landed. Lightspeed kick. Boom. Boom. With a loud boom, the ground around them trembled violently, and cracks appeared without any pattern. The ice continent that Hellable had painstakingly created was instantly turned into nothing. This guy, what kind of monster is he? Hellable's expression was abnormally ugly. Her face was covered in frost and she was surrounded by cold air. She was like a goddess that had walked out of ice and snow, isolated from the world. Even a docile sheep would fly into a rage after being repeatedly slapped in the face by someone, not to mention that Hellable was a ferocious shark. This is the price for infuriating me. With a shout, Hellable aimed her Zanpakuto at Dustless. The Ryatsu in her body was affected by Aizen's brainwashing, surging like a surging river. Hellable was furious and desperately injected spiritual pressure from his body into the Zanpakuto. Buzz buzz buzz. The dense spiritual pressure gathered on the Zanpakuto, and the entire blade was shining. It trembled slightly and emitted a clear sound as it was enveloped by the high-density spiritual pressure. Die. With a cold expression, Hellable remembered what Dustless had done. She raised her Zanpakuto and mercilessly swung it. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. A huge golden slash whizzed out and anything that stood in its way was annihilated under this blade. It carried Hellable's hatred as it slashed toward Dustless. Vastolord, you're not strong but you have quite the temper. With a contemptuous smile, Dustless used an unparalleled move with a snap of his fingers. Hado 63 Thunder Roar Cannon. The same golden flash shot out, leaving a straight afterimage in the sky. Idiot, you want to cancel out my move? Although you can do it, Hado 63 is too weak. The difference between the two of us is like heaven and earth. Hellable sneered. She had fought with the Grim Reaper before, so she had some understanding of Kido. To cancel out her attack, one would need at least Hado 90 and above. Looking at Dustless, Hellable's lips twitched, and she was about to give him a good beating. What happened next made her view of the world collapse instantly. Boom boom boom. A deafening explosion came from the sky, and the dark night sky shone brightly for a moment. Looking up, two powerful moves intertwined. Hellable's attack was obviously at a disadvantage, and it was forcefully torn apart by the golden sphere. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The ear-piercing sound of something breaking through the air came, and the aura of death rushed toward her. Hellable's eyes widened as she saw the golden sphere coming toward her. How is this possible? How did this guy do it? The Hado 63 of the other Grim Reapers would have a hard time destroying the steel skin of a greater void like Vastolord. Hellable, who was shocked, immediately flicked out a ray of light that could destroy the world. Wang Su's flash. Boom boom boom. There was an explosion in the void, followed by a blinding light that could be seen from 1,000 meters away. The temperature in the affected area increased by hundreds of times, and even the spiritual pressure in the atmosphere was evaporated, and there was a danger of suffocation. Hellable used her strongest void flash to cancel out Dustless's move. Do you understand now? Dustless asked indifferently without attacking, and the spiritual pressure in his body suddenly calmed down. What do you mean? Hellable, who was panting, asked in an unfriendly manner. This woman, looks like she still doesn't understand. No wonder she was used by Aizen. She's so slow that she doesn't even have a bottom line. Dustless complained in his mind and then said seriously, I told you before, you're just sent to die. The difference in our strength is just like before. In the end, you are just an abandoned pawn to test me. Chapter 10:14. Hellable was so angry at Dustless that her cheeks turned red, her blonde hair standing on end and her eyes spitting fire. Shut up. Hellable said gloomily, filled with murderous intent. However, Dustless was the kind of person who didn't know what was good for him. The more Hellable didn't want to listen to Dustless's verbal attacks, the more he shouted. Aizen, East Sensei and those three idiots Ikamaru-jin, they are all, whoosh whoosh whoosh. Without waiting for Wu Chen's voice to fall, several sharp lights that wanted to pierce through him and destroy him attacked him like a rainstorm. Boring. Dustless glanced at them and closed his eyes. A transparent wall formed. Bakudo 81 sky shattering. Bang bang bang. It was just a transparent wall as thin as a cicada's wing, but it was like two different worlds. Dustless from the other world couldn't even touch it. It was impossible to shake him. This guy's strength is unreliable. It's hard to make any substantial progress with his attacks that are all bark and no bite. Hellebelle had a headache. She used to think about what an invincible enemy looked like. Now she finally had a clearer understanding. This narrow-minded man who liked to scold others and speak ill of others was a living specimen. You seem to be very difficult to deal with. That's true. Seeing Hellebelle's confusion, Dustless smiled and teased. If you are willing to lower your head and be my spy, and snatch the half of Hogyoku from East Deity Zhao, I can let you go reluctantly. You want me to be a traitor? What nonsense are you talking about? Hellebelle said stubbornly. Her tone was as calm as a mountain, as if she was saying that even if she had to die, she would die together with Dustless. Aizen's method of training his subordinates is truly admirable. Seeing this, Dustless nodded. He could naturally hear the hidden meaning in Hellebelle's tone. Not to mention retreat, there was no room for negotiation. Wang Su's flash. Her slender fingers flickered and trembled. With a command, a golden beam of light covered the sky and earth. The demonic halo destroyed all living things. Everything in the world couldn't withstand a single blow from this beam of light. If a god blocked it, it would kill a god. If a Buddha blocked it, it would kill a Buddha. Stubborn. Seeing this, Wuxia directly rushed out. He didn't attack or defend at all. He simply turned into a rainbow light and went forward as if he was courting death. Boom boom boom. Dustless, who rushed into the sky, disappeared, and his Ryatsu also disappeared permanently as if he was blasted into nothingness. An intoxicating laughter burst out from Hellebelle's red lips as she muttered to herself, Wang Su's flash without any defense, even Aizen's Sama. But before she could be pleased with herself for a few seconds, Dustless's eccentric cocky voice directly petrified her. I'm not Aizen. I don't know if he'll be hurt, but I definitely won't be hurt. Countless photons gathered from all directions, flashing and reforming. A handsome young man appeared, his pure white captain's feather as clean as snow. His messy hair danced in the wind and a frivolous smile hung on his lips. He had a playful attitude toward the world. Seeing this, Hellebelle spat out blood. He was hit by Void Flash, but he was unharmed. I'm the Flash. It's just a void flash, the light of a firefly. It's easier said than done to touch me. His indifferent eyes looked down at Hellebelle, shooting out a cold light. Dustless lost his playful mood. He sensed that something was wrong. Even now, the expeditionary army had disappeared without a trace. I'll ask you one last time. Where is that bastard from East Senpai? His right hand was as terrifying as a black hole, instantly collecting a large amount of photons. The blinding light made Hellebelle unable to open her eyes. She could only cover her eyes with her hands. I don't know. Through the gap between her fingers, Hellebelle said without hesitation. The moment she said that, Dustless threw out the light in his hand coldly. Yasakani no Magatama. So. The light bullets that filled the sky rumbled down. The densely packed number of light bullets caused one's soul to tremble. 1, 2, 3. Facing this ridiculous number, Hellebelle became more and more desperate as she counted. Her heart was cold and she felt powerless. Boom boom boom. Hellebelle unleashed her remaining Ryatsu without holding back. She knew that if she didn't do anything, the light bullets would turn her into a sieve. Puchi. The powerful water flow overflowed from the sawtooth Zanpakuto and filled the sky in just a few breaths. Broken waterfall. With a command, the water flow in the sky came back to life and was given a special power. It changed according to Hellebelle's will, turning into a thick water pillar that blocked all the incoming light. Invading this huge water pillar, the light in the sky seemed to have stepped into a gravity field and could no longer move forward. Vastolord class large void. You have such a powerful ultimate move? I can't deny that I underestimated you before. Squinting his eyes into a slit, Wuxia looked at the oncoming water column and sighed softly. The entire sky suddenly turned solemn. In order to repay you for opening my eyes, I will show you a little bit of my strength. Dustless's slightly magnetic voice was like the will of the heavens, connected to the will of the heavens dominating the world. Soon after, the entire sky began to undergo a shocking change. An ominous, deathly stillness began to spread. The entire Hueco Mundo was silent, giving Hellebelle the illusion that she had teleported to another time and space. In this strange field, everything was cold to her and the entire world was her enemy. Chapter 10-15. Hellable was shocked. This was a feeling she had never felt before. Be it an illusion or an illusion, it was unforgettable. It left an indelible impression in her heart. Then the earth trembled. Violent tremors swept out like a tidal wave. Hellable was shocked to discover that an unprecedented colossus was standing in Hueco Mundo. What the hell is that? Death's Bankai? Her fluctuating tone was filled with fear. Hellable felt defeated like never before. No, it was definitely not as simple as seeing a ghost. At the very least, Hellable believed that she could fight or even destroy a so-called ghost if she encountered one. However, the towering figure in front of her made her feel as tiny and powerless as a grain of sand. She looked up at Dustless, or rather at the entire sky. Because Dustless represented the entire sky at this moment. The super monster behind him occupied Hellable's entire eyeball. There was no such thing as the sky. There was only Dustless and the giant Buddha behind him. The entire world was under his control. This is the end. With a soft murmur, Wuxian suddenly let out a roar. Immortal technique. Would release. True thousand hands. Avatar above head. The colossal figure hidden in the darkness revealed its ferocious appearance. The giant Buddha formed by countless giant Buddhas dragged its body forward. The earth kept shaking as if there was an earthquake. Looking at the oncoming water column, Dustless felt that it was incomparably huge before. Now it felt like a tiny insect that could be destroyed with a snap of his fingers. Get out of my way. As Dustless' voice fell, the giant Buddha behind him immediately responded, venting out Dustless's anger. Boom boom boom, tens of thousands of arms blasted out in unison. The endless number of arms came wave after wave, causing a devastating blow to anyone. It would have been fine if the individual arms were weak. Who would have thought that every arm that flew out would be extremely powerful? When they landed on the ground, they would cause violent tremors and deep craters. The entire Hueco Mundo was smashed until it was like the surface of the moon. Bam 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 bam, attacked by the fist shadows that filled the sky, the giant water column that was showing off was instantly shattered. It turned into a downpour that nourished the dried-up Hueco Mundo. My strongest move is actually so weak? Hellable stared blankly at the bursting water. She was completely drenched. Her beautiful eyes were dull and had lost their usual luster. Now it seemed that Dustless had been playing with her all this while. What kind of stupid thing have I done to cause such a beautiful little girl to have a mental breakdown? I'm really a sinful person. Dustless sat on the head of the giant Buddha and said apologetically. You bastard. Ling, who had not spoken to Dustless for many years, could not help but jump out and say, if you really don't want to hurt her, you should just kill her. Hearing this, Wuxian shook his finger and said with pity, kill her in seconds? How could I bear to do that? I'm not a ruthless person. Ling almost vomited blood. She's also struggled and worked hard. In order to reach Vasto Lord's level, she sacrificed hundreds of years. If I kill her without a word and don't give Hellable a chance to show herself, it's too unfair. Dustless explained as if it was the right thing to do. Ling's tone twitched as she scolded, you little brat, you're really shameless. You're clearly. In the end, Ling was speechless. She found herself speechless. Dustless's words were obviously twisted logic, but she could not find a suitable reason to refute. Killing someone without giving them a chance to spread their wings was indeed too cruel and heartless. Young girl, do you still want to resist? Dustless asked softly as he landed beside Hellable. Resist? Hellable raised her despondent eyes. Even though Dustless was right in front of her and she could reach him with her hands, but looking at the giant Buddha behind her, the Dustless in front of her was so far away that she could not touch him. I've said before that you're an abandoned pawn. Do you understand now? Dustless sat on the ground lazily. The chakra and spiritual pressure in his body had all calmed down, and the giant Buddha behind him had also disappeared. He stared at Hellable and asked. Hellable fell silent. When East Sensei wanted to send her here, she said that Dustless was just an ordinary captain. Based on the current situation, the ordinary captain that East Sensei said was not worth mentioning was now more than 100 times stronger. Moreover, Dustless's leisurely and uninteresting appearance clearly showed that he was not using his full strength. Damn East Sensei, Hellable, who understood, gritted her teeth and cursed. She clenched her fists tightly and the veins bulged. Her entire body was filled with negative emotions that made one's scalp numb. Then she remembered East Sensei and Aizen Sosuke, as well as Jin Ikamaru's shocking strength. A bitter self-deprecating smile appeared on Helibal's face, and she immediately deflated. She was instantly killed by Dustless. She was also instantly killed by the three of them. Moreover, she was now Dustless's captive. It's done. Seeing this, Dustless laughed inwardly. He cleared his throat and said loudly, "As long as you follow me, I can help you take revenge at some point in the future." Dustless's words made Helibal see the light of dawn again. Her unfocused eyes once again became bright and spirited. Not only that, his tone was deep and filled with endless magic. Helibal also seemed to be possessed. Following Dustless's thoughts, she continued to throw out bait and said, "In the future I can help you take off the mask on your body. What Aizen Sasuke can do, I can do the same. I can even do it more perfectly than him. It's flawless." Chapter 10:16. Dustless tempted. If Helibal wanted revenge, she had to rely on him and rely on Dustless's power to take revenge on Aizen. Whether it was a hollow or a Shinigami, they were creatures that clearly distinguished kindness and hatred. As long as they were tempted when they were at their weakest, the success rate would be 100%. No problem. After thinking for a while, Helibal knelt on one knee to show her loyalty. "Get up." Dustless smiled faintly. This was within his expectations. If someone who had always trusted him suddenly betrayed him, no matter who it was, it would be unforgettable. "Go back to East Sensei Lord for the time being," Dustless said after thinking for a while. "You want to let him go?" Helibal was disappointed. She thought Dustless would kill East Sensei Lord, but his tone showed that he didn't want to kill East Sensei Lord. "I can understand your feelings, but, hee. Dustless laughed sinisterly. "If Aizen and East Sensei betrayed you, killing them would be too easy. You can use the same method to take revenge. If you do the first thing, I'll do the 15th. This wasn't too much, it was just reciprocity." "That's right, good idea." Seeing this, Helibal nodded her head in agreement with Dustless's words. For example, when Aizen completes the Hogyoku, he stealthily stole it. Dustless smiled mischievously as if he could already see Aizen's face turning green. The Hogyoku was more important to Aizen than his life. "Then what's the next step of my plan? Accompany you to Soul Society?" Helibal asked expectantly. She was excited to enter the birthplace of a Shinigami as a hollow. "I'm a Shinigami, I can't bring you to Soul Society." It was impossible to bring a grand hollow like Vasto Lord back to Soul Society, and Dustless still needed Helibal to spy on East Sensei Lord. "I understand, my lord," Helibal said respectfully. She had a serious expression on her face. "My lord?" Just the sound of this word is annoying. Dustless's face was filled with displeasure when he heard this, and then he waved his hand and said bluntly, "Don't call me lord, just call me." Frowning, Dustless felt particularly gloomy. All the subordinates who had addressed him as lord had left him in the end. It was so shameful that they had betrayed him. Dustless had a shadow in his heart. "What's that called?" Helibal asked curiously, blinking her eyes. "Just call me young master." After pondering for a while, Dustless revealed a faint smile. It was just a form of address. It was fine as long as it wasn't that so-called lord. "Speaking of which, did you kill all of the expeditionary army?" Dustless suddenly changed the topic and asked. Hearing this, Helibal shook her head and denied it. "Young master is my main target. The expeditionary army is just an accompaniment. It doesn't matter if I killed them, and it doesn't matter if I didn't kill them. They are all cannon fodder anyway, insignificant characters." Dustless's tightly knitted brows immediately relaxed after hearing Helibal's words, and he felt relieved. He originally thought that the heavenly shell-embroidered Helibal had secretly colluded with East Sensei Lord, but now it seemed that he had been overthinking. What is East Sensei Lord doing with that old fellow? Let me guess. He must be experimenting with Aaroncore like crazy. Dustless completely ignored Helibal's existence and continued guessing. Helibal nodded and said, "He has indeed been experimenting with Aaroncore on a large number of occasions recently. A few of the disobedient Ajuches were executed by him and, at this point, Helibal paused and thought for a while. And many of the Aaroncore failed and became sacrificial lambs. Due to the pressure brought by Dustless, East Sensei Lord had been experimenting with Aaroncore. Forget it, wait until I get Urahara Kisuke's half of the Hogyoku, then I will deal with East Sensei." Lazily lying on the sand, Dustless made a decision. East Sensei Lord's idiot was not Sosuke Aizen. He was thousands of miles away from Aizen's intelligence, and it was not reliable to rely on him to complete the Hogyoku. Since East Sensei Lord did not have the ability to complete it, Dustless could only do it himself. Perhaps Urahara Kisuke did a good job of keeping it a secret. Until now, Sosuke Aizen, Jin Ikamaru and East Sensei Lord did not know that Urahara Kisuke had another Hogyoku. Go and keep an eye on East Sensei Lord's kid. If he does anything suspicious, immediately report to me. Dustless ordered Hellable. With a flash of light in his eyes, Dustless suddenly stood up. Master, are you planning to leave Hueco Mundo? Hellable asked. Dustless slowly nodded, his face filled with hostility. At first he said that he was going on an expedition to Hueco Mundo, but in fact he was fooling the people of Soul Society. His real purpose was to secretly go to the modern world after reaching Hueco Mundo. The only thing in the modern world that attracted Dustless was Urahara Kisuke's Hogyoku. Right. Wuxia said abruptly as he stared at Hellable. Embarrassment flashed across his face. I still need you to prepare the Black Passage to the modern world for me. The Shinigami was not a void and it was impossible to tear space to reach the modern world. He could only rely on the World Crossing Gate, and Dustless's trip was only between Hueco Mundo and Soul Society. Soul Society did not prepare a World Crossing Gate to the modern world for him. Hellable glanced at Dustless strangely, then did as she was told. This was a trivial matter for a void, but for a Shinigami, it was as difficult as ascending to heaven. Especially for a top void like Hellable Vastolord, it was easy for her to tear space, but the Shinigami could not do it. Whether it was going to Hueco Mundo or the modern world, he needed to go through the World Crossing Gate. Chapter 10:17. Although Hellable wondered what Dustless was doing in Hueco Mundo, she also shut up. A talkative subordinate asking something that shouldn't be asked will cause trouble. Hung inside the black cavity, there was an untimely sigh. In the darkness, the outline of a person walking slowly was clearly visible. The white face was sharp and angular, and the clear eyes were like the stars in the night sky, particularly dazzling and charming. Urahara Kisuke will definitely not hand over the Hogyoku. Dustless, who knew Urahara Kisuke, secretly said. He couldn't even hide it, let alone hand it over to Dustless. Takataka. The void broke, and Dustless poked his head out of the black cavity, looking down at the crowded land and the distant sky. Although the air pollution was very serious, he had lived in Soul Society for many years, and it felt good to suddenly change to the modern world. Who is it? The unfriendly burst was full of vigilance. Several figures rushed out of the air, and they all pulled out their Zanpakuto. Those who come out of the black cavity are generally Great Void. Members of the 10th Division. Looking at these Shinigami one by one, Dustless suddenly understood which division they were in. He vaguely remembered that the task of guarding the modern world seemed to be the responsibility of the 10th Division. Captain Haori. Looking at Dustless in surprise, several members of the 10th Division looked at each other and put down their Zanpakuto. Something is wrong, it's strange. Captain should have used the World Crossing Gate to come to the modern world. This seems to belong to the Great Void. Soul Society hasn't said that there will be a captain coming to the modern world recently. The members of the 10th Division whispered and looked at Dustless puzzledly. If it weren't for the Captain Haori, they would have killed him with their Zanpakuto. Only Great Void can come out of the black cavity, this is an unchangeable iron law. Glancing at several people, Dustless quietly spread his observation haki. After noticing that there was no one around, Dustless quietly asked, "Are there only a few of you patrolling the modern world?" "This is as you can see." Among them, the death god who was clearly the leader stepped forward and said, "Bail Egan died a few days ago, and the entire Hueco Mundo fell into the struggle for the king of Hueco Mundo, so the number of greater voids that invaded the modern realm has decreased. Currently there are only a few of us, that's for the best. It saves me the trouble of searching for the other members." Dustless's eyes flickered with red light as he spoke in a very strange manner. "What do you mean, Captain Wuxia?" The members of the 10th Division were confused and didn't understand what was going on. Clang clang clang. The sound of a saber being drawn stunned everyone. As they looked at Dustless, who was brimming with killing intent, they instinctively felt that something was wrong. "This blade of mine is called the first generation ghost blade. If it doesn't kill for a few days, it will feel uncomfortable." Dustless whispered as he pointed at the first-generation Ghost Blade's demonic blade. As soon as he finished speaking, first-generation Gui Che let out a clear cry, full of desire. So, Dustless's eyes emitted a cold glint as he condensed a wisp of spiritual pressure on his blade. He then roared, "Let me borrow your heads." Puchi. A spiritual pressure slash emerged from the tip of the saber, instantly killing several people and separating their heads from their bodies. What was even more sinister was that first-generation Ghost Blade's slash was filled with some kind of mysterious energy that annihilated their corpses. Boom boom boom. Due to the excessive strength of the slash, the ground also shook and was torn into a long and narrow abyss. The huge vibration could be felt several kilometers away. "If you want to blame someone, blame yourself for seeing me," Dustless muttered to himself as he looked at the place where the few people disappeared. Then looking down at the torn ground below, Dustless pondered, "You made such a big noise. Even if I don't have to look for you, you should come to my door." Kongzicho is not very big, but it's not small either. Dustless doesn't have the time to look for Urahara Kisuk's group in the vast sea of people. "Are they here?" A few minutes later, Dustless's eyes splashed and his eyes swept straight to the northern sky. "Originally I just wanted to attract Urahara Kisuk. Although he came, he also brought a group of uninvited guests. The scene a few kilometers away was unobstructed. In addition to Urahara Kisuk, there was also the Masked Legion and a wheat-skinned figure, Yi of the Four Maple Court. 10 kilometers, 5 kilometers, 1 kilometer, until the distance was only 100 meters. Less than a minute had passed. Bang bang bang. There were several explosions in the sky in succession, and nearly 10 figures suddenly stood in the sky. Everyone's eyes were directed at Dustless, their faces unfriendly and indifferent. Allah, they actually caused such a big commotion. The head captain of Soul Society will be furious. No one can withstand that lord's temper. Urahara Kisuk took the lead to break the dull deadlock and pretended to be afraid. "I'm sure the head captain will understand my difficulties. The modern realm is much more crowded than the Soul Society. If I don't create a big commotion to attract all of you here, it'll take forever for me to find it by myself." His eyes swept across everyone, and when it fell on Lisa Yasunamaru, Dustless's mouth curled into a mocking smile. He had a deep impression of this girl who liked to read pornographic books. Even so, he just glanced at her and his eyes finally fell on Urahara Kisuk. "I don't want to say anything unnecessary. This visit to the modern world is the captain's idea." Bringing up the shiny signboard of Old Man Yamamoto, Dustless said, "You must have heard about East Sage's defection to Soul Society, as well as the fact that he controlled both the Void and the Shinigami's power at the same time. The reason is that mysterious bead." Urahara Kisuk's face sank. He heard the other meaning in Dustless's words. When manager Urahara was in Soul Society, he also developed that kind of thing. "The captain hopes that you can call him out and I will leave. If you resist, according to the captain's orders, I can only annihilate all of you." Chapter 10:18. Manager Urahara also developed that kind of thing when he was in Soul Society. "The head captain hopes that you can call him out and I will leave. If you resist, according to the head captain's order, I can only annihilate all of you." These words immediately caused everyone to be stunned and they all glared at Dustless. "You don't seem to understand the situation. You are the one who is surrounded." Within the masked army, there were dissatisfied voices filled with ridicule and disdain. They deliberately raised their voices and it was filled with endless sarcasm and ridicule. Dustless looked at the source of the voice, and a blonde girl suddenly appeared in front of him. She looked beautiful and arrogant and Dustless recognized her. She was the second in command of the masked army, Ri Shiori. Hirako Masako, who usually disagreed with Ri Shiori, was now silent, and he silently agreed with Ri Shiori's actions. "You are just a little kid who hasn't grown up yet. You are not tall but you have a bad temper. I don't want to argue with you." Dustless looked away and he directly looked at Urahara Kisuk and threatened, "From now on you only have 5 minutes. Everything is up to you." Dustless then closed his eyes and his mind started to wander. "Bastard, how dare you ignore me?" Seeing this scene, Ri Shiori, who had a bad temper, roared and rushed out of the team. Hirako Masako also pretended not to see it, and let Ri Shiori do whatever she wanted. "Be careful, Ri Shiori, this guy is not normal. He is definitely not an ordinary captain." Lisa looked at Dustless with fear and said with a serious face, I have fought with her before and she is very strong. According to my personal guess, besides the head captain, this bad boy with a wicked smile is the weirdest in the Godii 13. Bad boy with a wicked smile? Hearing this, Dustless opened his eyes and his face was gloomy and he shouted loudly, "Which family is this little kid from? You haven't even grown any hair. There is no place for you to talk here. Crawl back home and sleep. Drink more milk and eat less snacks so you can grow taller." Dustless's words immediately ignited Ri Shiori, who was a powder keg. He opened his mouth and a huge flash appeared. Void flash. Whoosh, whoosh. The crimson light swept through the heavens and the earth, crushing toward Dustless in a mighty manner. It was unstoppable, and the energy fluctuations it emitted wanted to tear Dustless to pieces. She hated it when people called her short. A brat is indeed a brat. Since bickering doesn't work, he resorts to violence. Dustless stretched lazily and yawned. He smiled and said, "However, I'm an all-rounder. I'm good at bickering and I'm second to none when it comes to violence." The spiritual pressure hidden in Dustless's body began to roar and surge. He was not afraid at all as he looked at the incoming void flash. His clear eyes flashed with a thick sneer. Dao Breaker 88, Flying Dragon strikes the thief. Whoosh, whoosh. A flash of light far denser than Void Flash whistled through the air, streaking across the sky and heading straight for Void Flash. Everyone thought that the two equally powerful attacks would cancel each other out. However, what happened next greatly exceeded their expectations. There was no such thing as a countermeasure. The battle was one-sided. Crack. The dazzling light cut through the thistles, crushing Void Flash with overwhelming power. Void Flash, who had high hopes, was torn apart. They were not in the same dimension. The members of the masked army looked at each other in disbelief. They looked at the calm Dustless in disbelief. "Manager Urahara, you don't have time to be surprised. There are only about 4 minutes left," Dustless said coldly. He was decisive and dismissive. He was just a child who hadn't grown up. "As far as I know, the head captain didn't give such an order." Urahara Kisuk wondered. "Nonsense, because I made it up. What the hell do you know?" Dustless laughed in his heart, but on the surface he continued to say seriously, "Such a secret mission, if a defected captain like you knows about it, isn't all the secrets of Soul Society equivalent to being exposed to the world?" Urahara Kisuk raised his eyebrows. His eyes flashed. "Kisuk, don't hand over that thing for the time being. If he's with Aizen, then we'll be setting ourselves on fire." Yusuke Urahara analyzed calmly. Urahara Kisuk agreed. His first impression of Dustless was that he was ambitious. "You bastard, look here." Ri Shiroi pointed at Dustless and cursed, "I'll let you know the consequences of underestimating me. You're alone, but we're a team. Who's at an advantage?" "I don't need to tell you." After a triumphant laugh, Ri Shiroi said with exultation, "After we capture you, we can exchange Soul Society's captured Hiroyuki Rokuro." Ri Shiroi's tone took a sharp turn. The way he looked at Dustless changed drastically. He changed from being loyal to him to being overbearing. "Hiroyuki Rokuro? So that's how it is. You're after him. It's a good idea, but it's a pity. He's already been killed by East Sensei. His soul has been integrated into the semi-finished Hogyoku. Your wish is destined to fail." Dustless said with a slight smile. "Soul Society dares to kill a captive." Hirako Shinko's eyes were filled with energy. His Zanpakuto shook. The whole world began to change. It's like a dream world. "What does it have to do with me?" Facing the gaze of the masked legion, Dustless's performance was mediocre. It was Aizen and Jin who captured Hiroyuki Rokuro. It was also East Sensei who integrated his soul into the Hogyoku. It had nothing to do with Dustless. Chapter 1019. Urahara Kisuk pondered, and the words of Four Maple Court echoed in his mind. He sincerely agreed, and the half-finished Hogyoku that was about to be taken out in his right hand was stuffed back into his clothes. Such an inexplicable person just because of the head captain's order. It's too childish to give him Hogyoku. Moreover, it was still worth investigating whether the so-called head captain's order was real or fake. Perhaps it was just a rumor. "You're right. We really can't give Hogyoku to this man, he's very dangerous. Just like you said, his origin is mysterious, maybe he's Aizen's accomplice." Urahara Kisuk pulled out his Zanpakuto and expressed his position. Flang. Seeing this, Dustless also pulled out his first-generation Onikaku. The scene was full of gunpowder and a battle was about to begin. Is he going to resist to the end? I really don't know where his confidence comes from. We have so many people and our strength is around the captain level, but this kid is so calm and indifferent. Seeing Dustless was as calm as a mountain, Hirako Shinko said in surprise. It's not good to fight, although it's a group of minions after a long battle. Soul Society will notice sooner or later, and it will be bad if it causes unnecessary trouble. Ignoring the people of the Masked Legion, Dustless's eyes were fixed on Urahara Kisuk and Four Maple Court. Kid, you're crazy. Hirako Shinko was angry and said with a fake smile. He finally understood Rishiori's depressed mood just now. He was talking to others seriously, but the other party just glanced at him. The feeling of being looked down and ignored was unbearable for anyone. The Zanpakuto suddenly emitted a strange fragrance and Hirako Shinko sneered. What a strange smell. Slightly smelling the rich fragrance floating in the air, Dustless's eyes were in a trance, and then the world in front of him changed dramatically. Fall Kisuk. Hirako Shinko didn't hesitate to release his Zanpakuto, and the world in Dustless's eyes immediately turned upside down. Up and down, left and right, front and back, all directions were reversed. There's such an ability. It's amazing. Dustless nodded secretly, quite surprised. All the scenes in front of him were reversed and Hirako Shinko, who was standing before, was also upside down. So that's how it is. It must be that the fragrance I smelled just now that interfered with my vision. After pondering for a moment, Dustless understood the cause and effect and immediately praised. Not bad, very interesting ability. Illusionary Zanpakuto is very rare. Hearing this, Hirako Shinzi did not appreciate it. His expression turned cold and he stepped out, crossing through space. Annoying Grim Reaper, disappear. The moment he reappeared, Hirako Shinko appeared in front of Dustless, and his Zanpakuto swept from the left. Sensing the bone-piercing aura, Dustless raised his eyelids slightly and raised his first-generation ghost blade in an orderly manner. A cold light slashed towards Hirako Shinko. Idiot. Seeing this, Terashinko sneered. The first-generation ghost blade pierced through his body, but he was unharmed. It was obvious that it did not hit him. With an arrogant smile on his face, Hirako mocked, "Your brain is indeed slow to react. In your eyes I am upside down." In other words, Dustless saw Hirako Shinko coming from the left, but he was actually on the right. Coming alone to challenge all of us? You don't know the difference between life and death. Go repent in hell. Hirako Shinko's Zanpakuto mercilessly slashed towards Dustless. Soul Society killed Hirako Shinko's close friend, and now it's time to kill Dustless. Blood for blood. Puchi. Blood splashed in the void and the smile on Hirako Shinko's face froze. A piercing pain spread all over his body and a long and narrow wound appeared on his chest. His flesh was torn open and even his intestines could be seen. Are you dreaming? After a while, the absent-minded Hirako Shinko roared with blood in his mouth. His eyes suddenly looked at Dustless and he was hit back by merciless flash. Lightspeed kick. Boom boom boom. The bright light hit Hirako Shinko. His whole body was scorched, his consciousness fainted, and he was mercilessly bombarded, smashing a deep pit on the ground, leaving only a weak breath. Hirako Shinko was severely injured in just one blow. Can you confuse human vision? It's indeed a good ability. I forgot to say before, when I fight I rarely use my eyes. Observation hockey spread like a tide, and everyone was accurately locked by Dustless. Hirako. You bastard, I'm going to kill you. Beseech him together. The Masked Legion roared at the sky and their spiritual pressure was raised to the limit. A group of hungry wolves who hadn't eaten for many years rushed towards Dustless. Don't act rashly, come back quickly. Urahara Kisuk, who realized that something was wrong, quickly shouted, but he was ignored by the angry Masked Legion. They all used their strongest moves to attack Dustless. This is bad, we're completely passive. These guys should at least listen to me, I have a detailed plan. Urahara Kisuk smiled bitterly and couldn't help but feel a headache. Fetters are a double-edged sword, hurting others and hurting oneself. Once a teammate is injured, the potential of the body will burst out, but there is also a situation like now where they all turn into berserk beasts without reason. There is no need to make any plan. If he is at the same level as Sosuke Aizen, any plan is useless. If he is not as good as Aizen, we won't need a plan. I'm going to Kisuk. Slightly tidying up her slender hair, 4 maple quartz Ichi shouted. Instant open. The clothes behind her suddenly burst, revealing her smooth jade back, and a lot of spiritual pressure also overflowed. 4 maple quartz Ichi's incredible speed was beyond imagination, and she disappeared in the blink of an eye. Feelings are really deep, fetters are really great. Nowadays it's popular to die in groups. Dustless secretly laughed and brandished his saber to welcome. Chapter 10:20. Dustless held the first-generation ghost blade in his hand. Even if he still didn't have his own Zanpakuto, the strength of the Shinigami was enough to crush a generation. This speed, so abnormal. His pupils shrank. Dustless perceived a super-strong Ryatsu locking onto him, and the speed was extremely exaggerated. Even his observation haki couldn't capture the trajectory of the movement, and he could only feel a vague storm rushing toward him. Yi of the 4 Maple Court? Vaguely catching a short and delicate figure, Dustless calmed down. In the entire Soul Society, there are no more than 5 people who can reach this level of speed. Only Soi Fan, the captain of the 2nd Division, matches this figure with Yi of the 4 Maple Court. You came at the right time. You are Urahara Kisuk's weakness. After I catch you, Urahara Kisuk will obediently turn himself in and hand over the Hogyoku without me saying anything. With a decision in his heart, Dustless gave up the idea of using elementalization to avoid the attack and stood indifferently in the sky. You want to fight me head-on? Pretty boy captain, you have guts. Seeing that Dustless didn't dodge, Yi of the 4 Maple Court immediately raised her right arm and covered it with Ryatsu, condensing enough strength to smash a mountain. The moment the young fist blasted out, Dustless also raised his black arm. Boom, boom. At the place where Wuxian stood, there was a deafening explosion. The spiritual seed flame was ignited out of thin air. The blazing temperature made everyone stop in their tracks and dare not approach. Even if I can't kill him, this kid will definitely be choked to death by the Ryatsu flame. Yi of the 4 Maple Court raised her arm dramatically and announced her victory with a heroic smile. Damn it, is that the feeling just now? Is he really human? Is he made of iron? Holding her trembling right arm tightly, Yi of the 4 Maple Court was shocked. Her right hand, which hit Dustless, was red and swollen. If she forced it just now, Yi of the 4 Maple Court suspected that her entire hand bones would be broken. Boom, boom. A turbulent spiritual pressure hurricane wreaked havoc, and the burning spiritual seed flame in the void was instantly suppressed, revealing a handsome young man. His aura was steady, his clothes were bright, and his eyes were bright. His bright and spirited eyes showed that the fierce attacks of 4 Maple Court's Yi were all useless and self-deceiving. Gulp. Choking with sobs, Yi of the 4 Maple Courtyard looked even more gloomy. She was so depressed that she wanted to vomit blood. She had hit Dustless with all her strength, but her opponent was safe and sound. Instead, she had almost lost an arm. Dustless's eyes turned cold as he scrutinized them. Flashes of light filled the sky as they rained down. Dao Breaker 91, 1,000 Hands Bright Sky Cannon. The densely packed number of Dao Breaker was enough to stun anyone. Looking up, it was very different from the normal 91 Dao Breaker. It was almost as if it had formed a huge tide of energy. This fellow's attainment in the Ghost Dao is actually so terrifying. Urahara Kisuk sucked in a breath of cold air with lingering fear. He thought that his ghost path was second to none. Today he witnessed such an exaggerated attack, and it was an eye-opener. There was always someone better than him. Urahara Kisuk looked around and shouted loudly, "Leave it to me. You guys wait for the right opportunity to subdue him." The captain-level spiritual pressure was boiling, and its intensity was far stronger than that of ordinary captains. Bakudo 81 Skybreaker. Bakudo 81 Skybreaker. Bakudo 81 Skybreaker. After using more than a dozen Bakudo 81 in succession, Urahara Kisuk lowered his head and gasped for breath. His forehead was already covered in cold sweat. Using so many Bakudo at once, and they were all high-level ones, no one could withstand it. Boom, boom. The more effort, the greater the gain. Although the transparent defensive wall that they had painstakingly built was finally broken, it had also offset Dustless's attack. He actually blocked it. Then let's do it again. The spiritual pressure in Dustless's body surged again. With a wave of his hand, the world was filled with multicolored light, and a fatal threat descended on everyone's heart. Daobreaker 96 1 / whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Before Dustless could finish the word destroy the world, several figures surrounded him. You guys are really good at taking advantage of the situation. At least it's not too late to attack after I finish this Daobreaker. You really know how to take advantage of the situation. Dustless sighed. His arms and feet were subdued and even a Zanpakuto was hanging over his head. The people of the masked legion had already surrounded Dustless so that not even a drop of water could trickle through. Boy, don't think that I will kill you so easily. Looking at Hirako Masako on the ground who almost died, Sarutobi's eyes were burning and she shouted, I will give you the same scars and then destroy you. Hearing this, Dustless was indifferent. His observation hockey spread out, and the scene within a radius of 10 miles was visible at a glance. There is no one around and there are only a few people left in front of me. This is easy. Dustless secretly said in his heart, and his face was covered with frost and a layer of ice. You still want to resist? Be sensible or I will kill you immediately. Feeling the violent spiritual pressure in Dustless's body, Sarutobi warned and waved her Zanpakuto in her hand, which was full of threat. You guys can come to die together, your relationship is so deep that it makes people jealous. Looking around at the masked army as well as Yi of the Four Maple Court, Dustless said with emotion. Sarutobi snorted and said, We came to die? Understand the current situation, you are already a fish on the chopping board, and you still dare to talk nonsense. Waving her Zanpakuto, Sarutobi planned to teach Dustless a lesson. Everyone was angry and no one noticed the faint smile on her mouth. Only Urahara Kisuk saw it clearly. Did this guy deliberately let himself be caught to lure the enemy? Urahara Kisuk was shocked and immediately hurriedly shouted, Get away from him, he was deliberately subdued by you, the purpose is to lure you over. What a smart man. Unfortunately it's too late. Taking a deep look at Urahara Kisuk in the distance, Dustless spat out cold air and said, Daobreaker 90 Black Coffin. Chapter 1021. Hearing Urahara Kisuk's reminder, everyone was stunned. When they were about to ask, a black demonic brilliance fell from the sky. They looked up at the sky at the same time and the falling black light made their minds blank. Everyone was sweating for Dustless's madness, including Ri Shiori. This bastard, he actually used number 90 Heido to attack me? Staring at the expressionless Dustless, Ri Shiori felt a chill in his heart. A powerful enemy wasn't too scary, but a lunatic who didn't hesitate to perish together with the enemy, everyone would stay at a respectful distance. Retreat. With a shout, Ri Shiori turned into a rainbow light and retreated. The power of number 90 Heido is extraordinary. I heard that he has only been a Shinigami for half a year. It seems that he was not lucky to be the captain but real strength. Looking at the light pouring down, Urahara Kisuk felt as if he fell into an ice cave, and his whole body was cold. Looking at Yi of the Four Maple Court, his eyes were full of despair. He knew that it was too late to escape. It happened so suddenly that everyone was destined to tremble under the nightmare of number 90 Heido. Puchi, Puchi, Puchi. The screams of flesh being cut into pieces were endless. The masked army suffered heavy losses. Everyone was dripping with blood and their bodies were covered with hideous knife wounds. Bang bang bang. Everyone was like a kite with a broken string and they fell powerlessly. Just like Hirako they were killed in seconds. I'm fine. Yi of the Four Maple Court said in surprise. She was trampled by the invisible knife of the black coffin, just now, but unexpectedly she was safe and sound in the end. Of course, you are my important bargaining chip, Miss Yi. In the sky there was a whisper and warm light particles surged around. Immediately, under the shocked gaze of Urahara Kisuk and Yi of the Four Maple Court, Dustless's body automatically assembled. His face was like a knife and there was no extra expression on his cold face. Urahara Kisuk and Yi of the Four Maple Court looked at each other, and a strange emotion rose in their hearts at the same time. They did not know why, but he was unscathed by any attack, and it turned from inconceivable to normal. It was not surprising that this thin figure could perform any miracle. Their minds were already numb. Since I can't defeat him, I'll just seal him. A gust of chilly wind blew and Yi of the Four Maple Courtyard stopped talking abruptly. Her body was covered by some kind of magic power and she couldn't move. At the same time, 5 cold fingers grabbed her throat. Don't act rashly or I will kill you. The person who subdued Yi of the Four Maple Courtyard from behind was dustless with a cold expression. Hand over the Hogyoku, or I'll send her to heaven immediately. Dustless threatened as the stone in his heart landed safely. Hearing this, Urahara Kisuk's face turned ugly. He raised his voice and scolded, "You are the captain of Soul Society. How dare you threaten others with such despicable means? If you have the guts, let go of Miss Yi and fight me one-on-one." Even with Urahara Kisuk's temper at this moment, he was furious. He scolded Dustless for being shameless, ruthless, and extremely shameless. Every captain of Soul Society was open and above board. It was unheard of for a captain like Dustless to threaten others with a hostage. "Hand over the Hogyoku, don't consider my patience. If you provoke me, I will kill the woman as well," Dustless said impatiently with a cold tone. Urahara Kisuk's eyes flickered. After some consideration, he resolutely took out the Hogyoku. A shiny sphere was taken out from his clothes. At the moment when it appeared, Wu Chen's eyes stared straight and there was a burning desire. This kind of artifact that could promote the host to evolve infinitely, everyone coveted and yearned for it. "Let go of Miss Yi first or I will destroy it immediately. Don't even think about getting it." Urahara Kisuk threatened and raised the Hogyoku in his hand. Urahara Kisuk held it tightly as if the gorgeous gem would burst if he used a little force. "Is that so?" Dustless was unmoved and said indifferently, "You can try to destroy it if you can." When the Hogyoku came out, Urahara Kisuk tried every means to destroy it, but in the end it was futile. There was no way to destroy the Hogyoku. Urahara Kisuk was just bluffing Dustless. Seeing Dustless's stubbornness, Urahara Kisuk was speechless and had a headache. "If I don't let you see how scary I am, you won't give in easily." Staring at Urahara Kisuk's face that never changed, Dustless sneered in his heart. He looked at Yi of Sifeng Court in front of him and his eyes flashed with havoc and teasing. Crack! Dustless tore the clothes of Yi of Sifeng Court rudely. His hands went deep into her body and slowly touched her delicate skin. He also showed a satisfied expression which stimulated Urahara Kisuk's nerves. "Bastard, you're looking for death." Urahara Kisuk spat out a mouthful of old blood. His eyes turned scarlet, and his whole body was filled with murderous aura. For the first time in his life he lost his mind. This kid actually took advantage of Yi in front of him. How could he swallow it? "You want to fight with me?" Seeing Urahara Kisuk's face changing colors, Dustless was very proud. When he was about to go further, Yi of Sifeng Court suddenly said something that made Dustless's face turn black. "Kisuk, don't worry about me. Quickly take the Hogyoku and leave. I will treat it as if I was bitten by a pig." Yi of Sifeng Court was calm and said very casually, "I have a lot of special hobbies. If you don't give me the Hogyoku, I will let her have a taste of what it means to beg for death." Dustless heard this and deliberately showed a wretched smile which was very evil. Then he put his nose close to Yi of Sifeng Court and sniffed the body fragrance of Yi of Sifeng Court. His face was dull and his head was dizzy. He looked at Yi who was sweating and almost fainted. "C, why is she so smelly?"